Welcome to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation, the Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, and we're live. Hope everybody's doing well today. We know it's Memorial Day weekend, and there are going to be people that are going to be out and still you have to practice social distancing and wear a mask and things like that. Okay, this coronavirus threat is not over with, people. All right, I know it's warmer outside, but the coronavirus threat is not warmer. All right, so on tonight's show we have a lot to talk about. I posted an article on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, dealing with Joe Biden apologizes to Charlamagne Tha God for Joe Biden's stupid comments during the interview on the Breakfast Club that was uploaded Friday on YouTube, and everybody's been talking about it and things like that. And Charlamagne Tha God said that something to the effect that the best way Joe Biden could apologize is with the black agenda. And we know that Joe Biden released a very detailed 22-page black agenda, an agenda for empowering black America 3 weeks ago. So we'll talk a little bit on tonight's show. Now, number one, I have a number of different topics to deal with, okay? But we'll talk a little bit about Joe Biden's comments, and Joe Biden did apologize on a conference call with African American business leaders. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll share with you the interview that Charlamagne Tha God did Sunday morning, May 24th, with Joanne Reed on AM Joy. And what he's asking for is in Joe Biden's black policies for African Americans, for the African American community, his agenda. Okay, if you saw and heard my show last Sunday, and we'll get the audio podcast uploaded in the next day or so from last Sunday, but it's on my YouTube channel. We did it in two parts. It's on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and it's also on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Okay, the second part I spent about a little more than an hour going through part one of Joe Biden's policies for the African American community. Okay, and it's, when I printed it up, it's called Lift Every Voice, the Biden Plan for Black America. Okay, and it's at joebiden.com. This is not an endorsement, but I'm explaining this to you. So when I printed it up, it came out to 23 pages, right? Pages 2 through 11 deal with his policies to economically empower the African American community and to close the racial wealth gap and the racial income gap. We dealt with all that last week. If you missed it, go watch that on YouTube and Facebook, because I went in depth into it. So as I stated last week, what I'm going to do is each week we'll deal with a different part of Joe Biden's policies for the African American community. So on today's show, we'll deal with part 2, which deals with education. Okay, part 2 of his policies that deal with education. His policies are broken into 6 parts. His agenda is broken into 6 parts. Okay, so we'll talk about that. And also, we have an update in the Ahmaud Arbery case. We know the third man who did the recording, who recorded the video, he was arrested earlier this week. So we have some updates there. And then an update in the Breonna Taylor case as well, because her boyfriend, who was arrested on attempted murder charges, he has been released. So we have an update there also. Now, when we look at coronavirus, we see coronavirus is still ravaging America, still ravaging the African American community, even though almost all of the 50 states have some type of relaxing of stay-at-home orders and things like this, right? This is taking place. But we saw Thursday's unemployment numbers came out, and another 2.4 million Americans filed for unemployment this past week, bringing the total to 38.6 million Americans are unemployed in 9 weeks. 38.6 million Americans are unemployed in 9 weeks. All right. At the very same time, we have almost reached the 100,000 mark when it comes to Americans dying from COVID-19. Okay, we're almost at 100,000. Now, you remember back in February when Donald Trump said that we have 15 cases now, but pretty soon it'll be down close to zero. And you remember that I told you, oh, there may be a zero in the number, but it's not going to be close to zero. It's close to 100,000. You got 4 zeros, okay? All right, actually 5 zeros. So I told you it was going to happen. I told you it was going to happen. And it's going to continue. Now, while America, and New York Times has a big cover story with the names of the people who have died due to COVID-19, while this is taking place, Donald Trump is off playing golf. But Donald Trump criticized President Obama for playing golf during the Ebola crisis. So, because, you know, there was a good article from Huffington Post about this as well. I posted that also on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Okay, so we'll deal with these topics tonight and others. And then also, it's estimated that 45% of African American owned businesses will not survive the coronavirus economy. It's estimated that 45% of African American owned businesses will not survive the coronavirus economy. BlackEnterprise.com has an article dealing with that study. And then we saw from the Washington Post had a big article dealing with this, and a number of other news outlets that talked about this study from Columbia University that Donald Trump just brushed off. This deals with social distancing. Social distancing a week earlier could have saved 36,000 American lives, study says. This article came out from the Washington Post, May 21st, 2020. Social distancing a week earlier could have saved 36,000 American lives. And it's estimated in this study if social distancing had been implemented, I think 3 weeks earlier, it could have saved about 60,000 lives. Okay, so as I said before, and some people didn't like it when I said it, and I really don't care. As I told you before, this is Trump's fault, largely. I told you this. When you don't read your presidential daily briefings daily, and this information is in it, that warning after warning after warning in your presidential daily briefings, what do you think is going to happen? When you declare war on the scientists and you fire scientists and you disband global pandemic teams, what do you think is going to happen? This is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay? Now the people who said in 2016, I'm not going to vote and all this stuff, they didn't talk about what happens when you have a global pandemic. They didn't talk about they didn't talk about the impact that disbanding, firing scientists are going to have in not reading presidential daily briefings, things like this. As I explained to people in 2016, this is bigger than this. When you have a presidential election, it's not about one person versus another person. No, it's not. People think it's about one person. No, it's not. There were 4,000 positions Trump had to fill in his administration. That's what the Plum Book is about. Plum. Look up the Plum Book. The Plum Book deals with all the positions and their job descriptions in the president's administration. This has serious consequences. A lot of people don't understand how serious this is. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about it. We'll try to squeeze that in then with that article from BlackEnterprise.com. 45% of African American owned businesses won't survive the coronavirus economy. And then also there was a study that came out, the Guardian.co.uk had this article dealing with this study. This is from May 20th, 2020. Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at 3 times the rate of white people. Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at 3 times the rate of white people. All right. Now I'm just giving you some. Now this is all stuff I've read this past week. I have tons. I'm sitting here with about 40 articles. We're not going to get through all this tonight, but I'm just trying to give you some information to empower you so we can understand how policies and politics impacts every aspect of our lives. This is what happens when you have somebody who doesn't want to hear bad news, doesn't want to listen to the scientists, thinks they know more than the generals, thinks they know more than the scientists, etc. If we look at this article that came out from blackamericaweb.com, May 24th, 2020, coronavirus update. More than 20,000 African Americans have died from coronavirus. Coronavirus update. More than 20,000 African Americans have died from coronavirus. blackamericaweb.com has that article. New figures released by independent research organization APM Research Lab reveals that more than 20,000 African Americans have died from the coronavirus. The report breaks down coronavirus deaths in the U.S. up to May 19th by race and ethnicity. The latest COVID-19 mortality rate for African Americans is 2.5 times as high as the rate of white Americans and 2.2 times as high as the rate for Asians and Latinos or Hispanics. The state of Kansas has the widest racial disparity, where blacks are 7 times more likely to die from coronavirus than whites. Researchers of the study added that their ability to gather important data on race has been slowed by a lack of federal action and sometimes non-existent reporting by several states. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, reported its first set of death statistics by race this week in response to calls for basic information. So read the full article. We'll post that here on the thread of the broadcast. We'll post it on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Okay, but read the full article there. Okay, that's from blackamericaweb.com. And other outlets have picked this up as well. Okay, all right. Let's see here. Okay, we're coming up here on a break in a few minutes. We're going to get into the information dealing with Joe Biden and deal with his comments here. And let's see. JT, you have the clip from Joy and Reed, AM Joy. You have clip number 1 queued up. Okay, we'll get clip number 1 queued up. I emailed you the clips. JT, can you hear me? All right. Let me know if you have clip when you have clip 1 queued up. Okay, so also the calling number is 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. All right, and be sure and also go watch the broadcast from last week. It's on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network, and also my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Okay, because we went deep into part 1 of Biden's policies for the African American community. Okay, so now some people talked about the name of it, Lift Every Voice. I'm more concerned about the policies. I'm not going to get caught up on the name of it and things like this, right? Okay, so ABCnews.com, I've read a number of articles dealing with this, and I watched the interview that Charlamagne Tha God did with Biden. I watched it in its entirety twice. But ABC News has a good article dealing with this. Biden on comment to black radio host, I shouldn't have been such a wise guy. Biden on comment to black radio host, I shouldn't have been such a wise guy. So presumptive Democratic nominee Joe Biden has come under fire for comments he made during an interview with the Breakfast Club radio program, in which he quipped that if African American voters support Donald Trump over him in November, they aren't black. Okay, they aren't black. Now, Simone Sanders, after that interview aired, Simone Sanders said that it was Joe Biden was trying to make a joke. Okay, it was a bad joke. He shouldn't joke like that. It's not funny. I posted an interview on my Facebook fan page that Charlamagne Tha God did with Joy and Reed, and I got some interesting comments from it. Okay, there was some African Americans who agreed with what Joe Biden said. But we're going to get into Simone Sanders' comments also. But Donald Trump said, well, I'll tell you what, if you have a problem figuring out, this was toward the end of the interview, this was like 17 minutes, 21 seconds into the interview. The interview was right at about 18 minutes or so, okay? It had to be cut short. So Biden said, well, I'll tell you what, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black, okay? Biden told Charlamagne Tha God. And Charlemagne correctly said, it don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community. Okay? So Biden goes and talks about, take a look at my voting rights, take a look at my record. I extended the Voting Rights Act 25 years. I have a record that is second to none. The NAACP has endorsed me every time I've run. Now, the NAACP, Derek Johnson, president of the NAACP, put out a statement saying that the NAACP is nonpartisan. They don't endorse anybody. Okay, so I'm not sure what Biden is talking about there. He does get support from the NAACP. Okay, that is true. He does get support from them. But they haven't endorsed, they don't endorse anybody. They don't endorse a presidential candidate because they're nonpartisan. So he said, I mean, come on, take a look at my record, okay? Now, Biden, at the end of the interview, Charlamagne invited him back. Biden said he would come back and you know, answer questions, things like this, right? And we're going to, on the other side of the break, we're going to, I'm going to share with you the interview that Charlamagne Tha God did with Joanne Reed. Okay, now later on Friday, Joe Biden joined a call with the National Black Chamber of Commerce and conceded that he was much too, quote unquote, much too cavalier in his remarks, and said he did not take the black vote for granted. He said, quote, I know the comments have come off. He said, I know the comments have come off like I was taking the African American vote for granted, but nothing could be further from the truth. Biden said. He said, I shouldn't have been such a wise guy. I don't take the black vote for granted at all, and no one should have to vote for any party based on their race, their religion, their background. There are African Americans who think that Trump was worth voting for. I've got questions for them if they do, but anyway. He goes on to say, I don't think so. I'm prepared to put my record against his. That was the bottom line, and it was really unfortunate. I shouldn't have been so cavalier, end quote. Okay, so this is what Biden said. Now, one of the differences between Biden and Trump is that when Biden makes a mistake, and Biden's going to say something else that's stupid by November 3rd, but Trump is going to say something stupid this week. Okay, but one of the things that's different between Biden and Trump is that when Biden makes a mistake like that, he usually admits he apologizes and usually admits he makes the mistake, and tries not to make the mistake again. Trump's gonna say something stupid like in the next 24, 48 hours. Well, if you've been looking at his tweets, he's been doing this already. You look at his tweets from today. But on the other side of the break, I'll talk a little about this some more, and then we'll play the interview that Charlamagne Tha God did. JT, how much time do we have before the break? Now, okay, we have to go to break right now. All right. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, and we are live. Hope everybody's doing well. Share this broadcast on those who are watching on Facebook and YouTube. Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. Okay, and then we should be broadcasting on 9:10 a.m. Superstation's Facebook fan page, 9:10 a.m. Superstation as well. All right, so hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. Okay, so in the first segment of the show, I talked some about Joe Biden's stupid comments on when he was interviewed by Charlamagne Tha God on The Breakfast Club, and that aired Friday, May 22nd, I think that was. Okay, it was recorded on Thursday, recorded the day before, and I went through and watched it twice. And they dealt with a lot of policy issues, things like this. They need a longer, more in-depth interview. And I'm going to give you some of my comments here. They need a longer, more in-depth interview to deal with the policies. But Joe Biden made a stupid remark at the end. So what I find interesting, and I see this a lot, I've been in radio 10 years. I see how certain outlets will pick up on what the dominant media talks about. I find that interesting. So I read a number of articles dealing with this and saw headlines and things like this. And a lot of them picked up on you ain't black. If you vote for Trump, you ain't black. Or if you don't vote for me, you ain't black, blah, 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 right? And I saw people commenting on social media, on my Facebook fan page, the African History Network. If we look at the post here, it has 1,100 comments. Okay, and I just posted this in the last few hours, right? Very few of the comments deal with the policy discussions of the interview. Very few of the comments deal with actually the substance of the policies in Joe Biden's plan for African Americans, his policies for African Americans. Okay? And it's been out for 3 weeks. And I just find that interesting. So what's important here, as I said in the beginning, these are stupid comments. He should not make these comments again. Don't do that again. And the black people around him are going to probably cuss this behind out. Okay. But we can't get distracted with things like that. We have to stay focused on the policies. Okay. This is why each week I'm breaking down a different part of Joe Biden's policy for African Americans. Because I talk to people all across the country every day. A lot of our people don't even know the agenda exists. I'm not sure. Well, I guess, coronavirus has been going on and people have been losing loved ones and things like this. Okay. But in the interview, Charlamagne told Joe Biden, I've read some of your black agenda. You ain't read all of it? See, this is a whole... I'm going to play this clip here in just a minute, man, but JT said we have the clip queued up from the interview with AMJ. We'll go to that in just a minute, but it's a whole lot of this is just confusing. So let's go back 4 weeks ago. Charlamagne Tha God was interviewed on... And I'm not against Charlamagne. Don't take this the wrong way. Charlamagne Tha God was interviewed by Craig Melvin on MSNBC. So those that know me, I watch MSNBC 10, 11 hours a day. It's on right now. It's just muted. Because I do research all day long. When I'm not working, that's part of work. But if I'm not on the road, I'm doing research all day long. Charlamagne told Craig Melvin about 4 weeks ago on MSNBC, you could probably find the clip at msnbc.com. He said Joe Biden does not have a black agenda specifically, for dealing with policy specifically for the black community. Now, I talked about this in my March 10th broadcast. March 10th, 2020. You go back and watch it. And we went through and we looked at the February 28th, 2020, the whole article from theroot.com that compared all the policies, all the quote-unquote black agenda, black policies, etc. of all the Democratic candidates and ranked them based upon the 10-point policy matrix. I dealt with that in my March 10th, 2020 show. I did it again April 26, 2020, after Joe Biden became the presumptive nominee and President Barack Obama came out and endorsed them. Bernie Sanders came out and endorsed them. We dealt with that again because he expanded his policies. At the time, he did not have a specific agenda for the African American community, a detailed one, but he had released highlights of it because I saw it on his website because I visit the websites of the candidates. I go research this stuff. Okay, and just somebody you on social media talking. That's why I provide you with the evidence. Proper documentation ends all conversation. So he released probably late April. Biden released the highlights because I knew a black agenda was coming from things that I'm hearing and researching. Right. So then, after Biden released it. It was about 3 weeks ago. Charlamagne Tha God and Reverend Al Sharpton were interviewed on MSNBC by Alex Witt, W-I-T-T. The clip should be, the full clip should be on MSNBC's website. And you can find some of it on, if you just Google Charlamagne Tha God, Alex Witt, MSNBC, it'll come up, okay? In that interview, they talked a little bit about Joe Biden's policies for African Americans, and Charlamagne said it's a good start. He didn't say he read it in the interview. He said it's a good start. So I know he's read some of it because he said he's read some of it in the interview he did with Joe Biden Thursday. But part of preparation, when you do an interview like that, is to read the entire agenda. So hopefully he will read the entire agenda, by the time Biden comes back, because it's extremely important, because that helps to shape your questions that you ask. All right. So let's go. I'll give more of my comments after we go to this clip here from AM Joy. Let's okay. We have clip. We had a clip queued up, right, JT? Okay, let's go to this clip from AM Joy. This is Charlamagne Tha God responds to Biden apology. The best apology is a black agenda. Okay, let's go to this clip.
Joining me now is Charlamagne Tha God of The Breakfast Club on Power 105.1. Charlamagne, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thank you for having me, Joy. How are you?
I'm good. So, I don't know if you were able to hear Kareem. We had a little bit of an audio problem toward the end. But, I want to, first of all, congratulate you on the interview. The interview, people are talking about that last bit of it. That's the part that went viral. But the substance of the interview was really solid. You had very blunt questions for Vice President Biden. They were about substance. They were about what you want to see for the community. Your listeners, I'm sure, give you lots and lots of feedback about what it is that they want from this man. What are people telling you that they want him to do?
Just some really major policy commitments for the black community, mainly in the form of economic justice, so we can, tip the scales on some of this wealth inequality in America. I do hear a lot of people say, we also want him to have a black woman running mate, but not just any black woman running mate, one that's going to actually, get in office and care that black people benefit from her presence there. We need substance and significance over symbolism. And he's already committed to putting the black woman on the Supreme Court. So I just want him and the Democratic Party to know that it's time to give back to the black community in a very tangible way. But I can say that, the major point that I'm hearing about is just, economic justice, some form of economic justice.
And let me play the apology that Joe Biden gave. He got on a call with black business leaders and apologized for the comment that he made at the end of your show. Let me let you listen to that.
The last thing I want to do, and I shouldn't have been such a wise guy. I shouldn't have been so cavalier in responding to what I thought was, anyway, it was, I don't take it for granted at all. And no one should have to vote for any party based on their race, their religion, their background.
Do you think there's a risk that not just Joe Biden, but the Democratic Party in general just takes for granted that, well, the black people are with us, so we don't really have to give them anything else. They're going to vote for us regardless. Look, they voted for Joe Biden in overwhelming numbers, 6 in 10 black voters, particularly in southern states. They all voted for Joe Biden. We don't need to offer anything more. Do you worry that that is the attitude that Democrats are taking toward the black community?
I mean, I know that's the attitude, that's why I don't even care about the words and the lip service, and the apology is cool. But the best apology is actually a black agenda. They got to make some real policy commitments to black people. We got to stop acting like the fact that blacks are overrepresented in America when it comes to welfare, poverty, unemployment, homelessness, drug addiction, crime, coronavirus. Like, that's no accident. Like, the whole function of systemic racism is to marginalize black people. And as the great Dr. Claude Anderson says in the book Powernomics, white society has an out of sight, out of mind attitude about racism. And they don't like to have any discussions of substance about systemic racism. So when you have black people who have the nerve, the audacity, the unmitigated gall to act like citizens and demand something of our votes, it's a problem. It's like you got, whites telling us to stay in our place, and you got black people saying, oh, stop, now is not the time. You're going to get Trump reelected. It has to come to a point where we stop putting the burden on black voters to show up for Democrats and start putting the burden on Democrats to show up for black voters.
And what you just said, that is a lot of what I'm hearing of even African Americans saying, no, don't say that. Don't say those things because it might hurt the chances of beating Donald Trump. And this question gets asked to me a lot. And so I'll ask the question to you. What if Joe Biden says, nope, I'm picking Amy Klobuchar. She's my running mate. Then what do you do?
Well, on top of possible Russian interference and voter suppression, Dems have to worry about voter depression. And that's people staying home on election day because they just aren't enthused by the candidate. You know, you can't act like this is the most important election ever, but run a campaign from your basement and, you know, not make some real, you know, policy commitments to the black community, you know, not listen to some of the demands that the black community are making. You know, I think, you know, people are sitting around hoping that Trump loses instead of going out there and actually beating him. He has to do something that energizes his campaign, that, you know, brings some actual enthusiasm to his campaign. So those 4.4 million Obama voters who, you know, stayed home in 2016, more than a third of them black, you know, don't do that this year. You got to make them come out.
The interview was cut short. You could hear the audio of one of the campaign staffers saying, well, we have to end now, that the former vice president has to do another interview. You said you had more questions. What else did you want to ask him? I'm going to let you get your questions out now.
Oh, that's good. I actually have a couple of them right here. I wanted to ask him about reparations because, you know, in his Black Agenda to Lift Every Voice, he committed to studying reparations. And, you know, I just wanted to ask him, what does reparations, you know, for black people look like to him? And what is he prepared to do, you know, based on that study? You know, I also wanted to talk to him about his plan for economic recovery, you know, after we get out of this pandemic, and how can we make sure that black communities aren't left behind yet again, like we were in the recovery from the last crisis. And, you know, the question also on his Black Agenda, he talked about decriminalizing marijuana, but not necessarily legalizing it. And I got that question in, but I wanted to know why he just doesn't, you know, take it off the federal drug schedule altogether, and why not just legalize it and tax it, especially when we know that black men are the ones paying the price for it being illegal, and we get locked out of the wealth that's being created by legalizing it. So those are a few of the questions I have for him that I didn't get to.
And those are good questions. Hopefully he will come back on your show, and I would love to book him as well. So maybe, you know, if he comes on here, I'll ask those questions for you as well. And I'm going to give you a final opportunity to speak to the Congress right now. We are seeing in the United States House of Representatives, they're passing bills that are not getting brought up in the Senate, but there has been some criticism from progressives saying they should go for more. That, you know, if the Republicans are going to refuse to act, then Democrats should say, then let's just go for everything that we really want and start negotiating from that position. Do you agree with that, or do you know, what is your take on how Democrats are doing in trying to put some of this forward now?
No, I think that's good. I think it's good because, you know, when I'm sitting back at home and, you know, I'm watching, you know, Democrats swing for the fence, especially if they're swinging for the fence on behalf of, you know, the poor and disenfranchised, on behalf of, you know, black people and the marginalized, that makes me say, okay, you know, salute to them. At least they're trying. And at least I know that they're trying, and I know that they're being blocked. So therefore, I know who at least is attempting to fight for me, and I know who is opposing me.
Yeah. Charlamagne Tha God, thank you very much. It's great to have you on the show. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great Memorial Day weekend. Please stay safe.
Thank you, Joy. Blessings.
All right. Stop. Pause it there, JT. Okay, so that was from AM Joy. And he said at the end, at least I know that they're trying, talking about Democrats, so I know who's blocking them. It's Republicans. Well, I've been telling you that for, past 4 years? Just telling you that back in 2016 when Trump was running. If you go back and look at my podcast, look at my broadcast from 2016 when I was doing nationally syndicated radio for five days a week. I was doing the Michael Imhotep show on the Empowerment Radio Network. I was guest hosting Roland Martin's nationally syndicated radio show, on top of doing mine 5 days a week. I was, and then before Roland came on, Warren Ballantyne, I was guest host. I did his for 3 months, okay? And then I was doing local radio here in Detroit. On top of doing my nationally syndicated radio show 5 days a week, I was doing local radio here on 910 AM the Superstation, okay? I was doing the morning show every Thursday morning, and then doing my show, this show here, Sunday nights, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the African History Network show. And I warned you about Trump then and provided the evidence. So What Charlamagne said, I agree with basically almost everything he said. Maybe almost everything. I have to go back and look at it again. But basically everything he said, I agree with what he said. He asked some good questions in the interview. The next interview, I think he'll have more time. Also, the next interview, he would have read the full plan from Biden, which is 22 pages. And it's a living document, as Biden and the campaign explains. It's a living document, which means it's going to expand as well. So let's continue here. Let me go to some of my comments here that I laid out, and let's see where we got some time before the break. How's everybody doing? We're on our Facebook fan page, The African History Network, my personal page, Michael Imhotep, as well, on Facebook and YouTube. And so people understand reparations, because people say cut the check, cut the check. Y'all, you ever read Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution? This has to go through Congress before it goes to the president's desk to be signed into law. And if you've seen some of my previous broadcasts, we really don't understand how to make legal arguments for reparations. I don't have time to get deep into it now. Do you realize how many white people got to vote on this before it actually gets signed into law, before it goes to the president's desk to be signed into law? There are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. Only 11% are black. There are 435 members of the U.S. House of Representatives. There are 100 members in the U.S. Senate. Only 3 are black. Really 2.5, because one of them don't act like it half the time. That's Senator Tim Scott, Black Tea Party Republican of South Carolina. He already said he's not voting for reparations. Do you realize in the Senate that you will probably need 60 votes unless they employ the nuclear option, which I doubt they will, and reduce it down to 51? You need 60 votes in the Senate. So if Democrats take back control of the Senate and say they get, so now it's 53-47, right? 53-47, and 47 includes 45 Democrats, 2 independent senators, Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont and Senator Angus King of, I think it's Maine. So say it flips and it's 53-47 Democrats. You still need 7 Republicans to get to 60. If the black Republicans say they ain't voting for reparations, what do you think the chance of the white Republicans voting for reparations is? See, nobody wants to have these conversations because these aren't sexy conversations. But this is reality. I deal with practicality. How do we actually get this bill from point A to point Z? Because people aren't explaining this to our people. When I speak all across the country, and I asked them, I said, y'all do realize that Congress controls the purse strings. This is why during the primaries, I'm like, why y'all so focused on the president and not voting for president, but the president reparations? You need to focus on Congress. But this is why, if you go back to some of my previous broadcasts, you watch my April 26th broadcast, you watch my May 3rd broadcast where I dealt with Diddy, talking about holding the black vote hostage, all that stuff. I said the foundation is we have to read the U.S. Constitution because we don't understand it. It lays everything out right there. But we don't understand history, don't understand law. I talked about the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866. That's law still in the books right now. And many of our ancestors were in it, like Sarah Rector, who was the richest Afro-American girl in the early 1900s. And her family, and many other African Americans, African people, got land from those Indian treaties because they were former slaves of the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians. Those laws are still on the books now. We were pushed out of that. Instead of going after that, we chasing after some other stuff. Okay, all right. I'm trying to tell you. Yeah, sometimes I just stay quiet. Okay, well, all right. And I talked to Dr. Claude Anderson. Dr. Claude Anderson was one of my teachers. He and I talked. When I was doing my research on the origins of Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma, that ties into the Black Freedmen Indian Treaties of 1866 because Tulsa Oklahoma was founded by Creek Indians around 1836 who got pushed off their land in southeastern United States because of the Indian Removal Act of 1830, signed into law by President Andrew Jackson, who's Donald Trump's favorite president, by the way. And the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Cherokee, and Seminole Indians and the Creek, they go over 1,000 miles into Oklahoma. Oklahoma was not a state at that time. It was a territory. Oklahoma did not become a state until 1907, which is why Bass Reeves, one of the greatest lawmen in the history of this country, why Bass Reeves had to retire because he was in Oklahoma. And when Oklahoma became a state in the Union in 1907, they were practicing segregation, so he had to retire. Captured over 3,000 outlaws, and it's believed that the character of the Lone Ranger is based upon Bass Reeves. Okay, I don't have time getting all this. This is a 2-hour show here. This ain't my my regular broadcast during the week. We got 2 hours here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation. But see, we don't understand history and law. I'm all for reparations. I'm for making legal arguments dealing with reparations, and I'm not for playing games with our people, making them think they're gonna get something they're not gonna get. I don't play those type of games. I'm for making legal arguments for reparations. The foundation for legal arguments for reparations is based upon Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1 of the U.S. Constitution. That's why March 2nd, 1807, the U.S. Congress outlawed the international transatlantic slave trade. That's 1807, which goes into effect January 1st, 1808. But we ain't read the Constitution, so we don't know none of this stuff. This is why when you deal with the U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841, how much time we have before the break, JT? This is why when you deal with the U.S. Supreme Court case of 1841 of the Amistad slave ship, if you actually study that case, that U.S. Supreme Court case, that tells you that's a foundation for a legal argument for reparations. But we sat up and watched the movie, and we know give us free, but we don't know why they were set free. They were set free because it was illegal for that ship to come into the U.S. in U.S. waters at that time because the international transatlantic slave trade had been outlawed by the U.S. Congress, signed into law by a president. The foundation of that is the U.S. Constitution, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 1. I don't play these games. You got to talk to somebody else for that. I do not play these games. I'm not for playing games with our people. Okay, period. I don't give a damn who don't like it. I'm telling you. We have to deal with legal arguments for this. I interviewed Brother Reggie Marbury, Dr. Jahi Issa, who wrote an article dealing with this, really breaking this down. And I knew some of this before I interviewed them. And then I learned even more from that. And I already knew about the Black Freeman Indian Treaties of 1866. Because when I was doing my research on Black Wall Street, I have like a 2.5-hour lecture on Black Wall Street, and I'm in a documentary that first documentary Boyce Watkins did, Resurrecting Black Wall Street: The Blueprint. And I called Dr. Claude Anderson because I'm like, Doc, I said, the Black Freeman Indian Treaties of 1866, this ties into the origins of Black Wall Street because a lot of the early black landowners in Tulsa, Oklahoma, got land from those Indian treaties. That's why Tulsa, see, people think Tulsa was 100% black town. No, it wasn't. The North Tulsa. North Tulsa is where the African Americans live. South Tulsa is where the white people live. North Tulsa and South Tulsa was separated by the railroad track. North Tulsa was not 100% black or 100% African American. It was predominantly, there was still Native Americans that lived there. The Creek Indians. Because they founded Tulsa. Tulsa comes from the Creek Indian word Tallahassee. Come on, people. Read this book here. Read this. This is probably one of the best books dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. This is by Hannibal B. Johnson. I talked to Hannibal B. Johnson when I was doing my research on Black Wall Street. Black Wall Street from Riot to Renaissance in Tulsa's historic Greenwood District. This is probably one of the best books that you find dealing with the history of Black Wall Street. Okay? Yes, I've read it. It's in my library. All right. So let me know how much time before the break, JT. Okay, so let me get to my comments here because we only got 2 hours here, and I ain't trying. It's been a long week, and I, see, you get me going. You see, See, this is where I brought. See, normally on Sundays, I'm in the studios at 9, 10 a.m. The Superstation, you see the logo behind me. I'm in the radio station studio. But because of Governor Gretchen Whitmer's stay-at-home order, it was broadcasting from home. Okay? So periodically, I'll forget and think it's during the week, and I got 3-4 hours to do a broadcast, and I don't. We're on 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. So let me continue, right? See, I did. You remember on the 18? You remember on the 18 and BA, Mr. T used to say Hannibal was on the jazz. See, I get on the jazz. I'll just go. It don't matter to me. This is all my equipment. I go as long as I want to. All right, but we don't have that time. So let's continue. All right. So we know Biden apologized, said it was cavalier, stupid for him to say that, etc. Right? But Simone Sanders and Biden talked about comparing his record to Trump's record. Okay? The stupid comments set aside. Okay? Don't do that again. You compare Biden's record to Trump's record. You compare Biden's policies to Trump policies. Okay? There ain't no comparison. I told you, there is no comparison between the two. Biden's policies, if Biden is flawed, okay, if he was running against somebody else, I may vote for somebody else. Okay? Biden's policies, if you study them, and I have, are much better for African Americans. Very few people want to talk about that because it's easy to put out YouTube videos when you ain't read nothing. It's easy to do that. It's harder to go through and do research and then come and present the research to the people. Okay? All right, so how much time before the break, JT? Let me know. All right, so it's 6 minutes. 6 minutes. Dougie Fresh here on. He says 6 minutes before the break. All right. Let's put him on speakerphone. All right, so here are a few things that Biden has to understand when he does an interview like on the Breakfast Club. First of all, I was reading some of the comments that, and yeah, Biden is gaffe prone, but what do you think Trump is? If Biden is a gaffe machine, Trump is a gaffe factory. If Biden is a gaffe machine, Trump is a gaffe factory. Okay? So there ain't no comparison between the two of them like that. On my Facebook fan page, the African History Network, if you don't follow us there, go ahead and follow us. I posted the interview that Joanne Reed did with Charlamagne Tha God, right? Charlamagne Tha God responds to Biden's apology. The best apology is a black agenda. Okay, so I said, as I stated on my show last week, I get the impression that Charlamagne hasn't read all of Biden's 22-page agenda for the African American community. He admitted he's read some of it, and I know he'll read the rest of it. Almost half of Biden's agenda deals with closing the racial wealth and income gap for African Americans. Almost half of pages 2 through 11 deals with economic empowerment. That's why I had to spend so much time last week dealing with it. So I said that Biden has to understand that when he goes on the TV on a show like the Breakfast Club, he's going to get different types of questions that he'll get on MSNBC or CNN. So some people weren't familiar with the Breakfast Club. I was reading some of the comments on the post. We got like over 1,000 comments here. The Breakfast Club targets people 18 to 35 years old. Okay, that's their demographic, 18 to 35. They play hip hop. They're out of New York, 105.1 out of New York. The show is syndicated across the country. It's a morning show, and they play hip hop music and they have interviews with celebrities, political figures, things like this. Right? They talk about pop culture, politics, etc. Okay, it's a very popular show. I don't listen to them on the radio. I follow them on YouTube. So the people they interview, I find out about them. They pop up on my YouTube feed, right? So Biden is used to being interviewed in general by journalists, political figures, things like this, right? That's the first time on the Breakfast Club. So he has to understand that some people are hearing you really being interviewed for the first time. So they're going to ask questions and ask you about your record. Biden, just so people understand, Biden gets testy about his record when some white people interview him. It's not just African Americans. That's how he is. Okay? He feels the need to defend his record. Okay? When white people interview him, Mike Memoli, who's a reporter on MSNBC, when the story broke about all this, Mike Memoli was interviewed. They were reporting on it. They had two white reporters on MSNBC reporting on this, and he said that Biden gets testy about his record. He does. Okay? The other thing is important to understand is that when Biden says, come on, man, right? Some people thought he was saying that because he was on the Breakfast Club talking to a black guy. That's how Biden talks. I've seen Biden being interviewed by Joe Scarborough on MSNBC Morning Joe. That's how Biden talks. Okay? So people just keep that in mind. Now, Biden has to understand when he goes on shows like this, you're not being interviewed by journalists. They're going to ask you questions about your record because people are trying to find out more about you. The other thing is, it's good for people to ask questions. At the end of the interview, Charlamagne said, we're going to have you back. I've got more questions, etc. It's good to have questions. It's good to ask questions about policies. It doesn't mean somebody's against you because they ask questions about your policies. People are trying to learn. You have people who listen to that show and watch the videos who are 18, 19, 20, 21, 25, right? They don't know your whole background and things like this. And Charlamagne said something that was very important. He said, it's not that people don't want to vote, but they want to know what are they getting when they're voting, right? They want to understand this quid pro quo. That's excellent. That's fine. Okay? So that's why asking the questions are good. And there's some people who listen who are going to vote for Biden but still have questions. That's fine. You ask questions about policies. That's what you're supposed to do. Okay? Now, Biden needs to go back on the Breakfast Club, apologize to Charlamagne Tha God, and apologize to his audience, okay, for that comment. Because that comment was stupid, all right? And I'm going to read Simone Sanders' comments. She went on Twitter, and she was interviewed. She did a really good interview with Reverend Al Sharpton on Politics Nation on Sunday, May 24th, 2020 on MSNBC, okay? And I was trying to find the clip. Maybe they'll post it later. And she went through and, she really showed a contrast between Biden and Trump. It's something else that's important to understand. A lot of the people that listen to the Breakfast Club and watch the YouTube videos, they don't follow all the nuances of politics. They don't follow politics day to day. I follow this day to day. Okay? This is what I do. I've been hosting the African History Network show for 10 years. I'm not just a historian. I study politics. I've helped write public policy for the city of Detroit under the Kwame Kilpatrick administration, Executive Order 22. We hear Kwame's going to get out. Okay, now I ain't work for the city. I ain't go to jail, nothing like that. No, it wasn't nothing like that. But I also understand that everybody doesn't follow all the nuances of politics, and people have questions. Okay, so that's why shows like that are important. I may not agree with all the music they play and things like that, but that's why shows like that are important. Okay, so what, we got 2 minutes before the break, JT? Now, okay, let's see. Okay, we got all those points here. It's time for the break, JT. Let me know. Now somebody on my say it again.
It is time to go to break.
It's time to go to break. All right. Okay. So, all right, look, guys, we got to go to break. We'll be back in a few minutes. You listen to the African History Network show, 9:10 a.m. the Superstation of Future Radio, WFDF, 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600 is the call-in number. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, we're still on Facebook and YouTube, so guys, stand by here.
Central Park Deli on Walker between 8 and 9 Mile Road.
Let me switch over to Bluetooth. We do 2 hours. This is my Sunday night show. Been doing 4 years. We celebrated 4-year anniversary April of 2020. 4 years on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF. Terrestrial radio. I'm part of media. I have a press pass. My press pass is in my bag. We'll be back from break in a few minutes. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. I know we're on YouTube as well. Invite your friends to tune in also. We're going to get into, now here's what we're going to do, right? Since I have more energy tonight than some Sunday nights, we're going to go more than 2 hours. Okay, we'll see how far past 2 hours we go based upon how much energy I have. Because I had to get up in the morning, all right? Because I have a bunch of topics laid out here. But I want to make sure we hit this dealing with Biden. And then also, when we come back from the break, as I stated, I'm going to get into part 2 of Biden's policies for African Americans, his agenda for the African American community. Part 2 deals with education, so we're going to do that also, okay? And we'll go past 2 hours and see how much energy I have, and we're going to wrap it up when I get too tired. This is how we're going to do it, okay? And then I'll probably do a broadcast during the week, all right? How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. What appropriates for the citizens of free states started with great health care, okay. Okay, Wilma, Tyrone. All right, everybody, hey, if you like this type of information, also you could donate to the African History Network, $, the AHN show through PayPal, $, the AHN show through Cash App, $, the AHN show through Cash App, then also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN show, paypal.me/the AHN show, okay? All right, so with all this going on, a lot of people are looking for healthy products, soaps and things like this, and sageandelmapothecary.com designs over 60 different beautifully handcrafted soaps, natural toothpaste, hydrating oils, deodorants, face masks, shampoos, conditioners, and so much more. The holistic approach to self-care formulate their product inventory. They're proud to serve their community of plant-based product supporters and offerings for the entire family. Okay, they use simple ingredients such as whole fruits, herbs, and vegetables. Each product crafted offers a unique plant-based experience. Visit their website, sageandelmapothecary.com, APOTHECARY, sageandelmapothecary.com. They have used the promo code AHN Spring 20, AHN Spring 20 to get 20% off your order also. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation of Future Radio. Hey, I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, and we are live. Is that loud enough for you all? All right, everybody, wake up, wake up. Okay, wake up, everybody. It's going to be a new day. All right, so calling numbers 313-778-7600. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Do we have any callers, JT? Okay, no callers right now. That's fine. Everybody's listening. Everybody's tuned in. Got your ears on. Taking notes. That's a good thing. Everybody doesn't have to call in. Okay. So, right before the break, we were talking about, I shared the interview that Charlamagne Tha God did on Joanne Reed's show, AM Joy, MSNBC. We're breaking down some of his comments. The other important thing to note, I was looking at some of the comments from the post I did on Facebook, the interview that Charlamagne did on Joanne Reed's show. Like I said, we got over 1,000 comments on it. Somebody said, when did Charlamagne become the voice of Black America? Things like this. Okay, so keep in mind, okay, as I responded, Charlamagne Tha God does not, some people take offense to his last name, things like whatever. But as one of my teachers, Professor James Small, says, right, who's a Babalarisha, similar to a Babalawo in the Ifa spiritual system of the Yoruba Nigeria. It's a whole other conversation. We're God having a human experience. Okay, now I should preface this by saying this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness just because you never heard it before. I disagree with it. Does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do research to understand what I'm talking about. Okay, that does not mean there's not a supreme being. That means that also understanding coming from understanding African cosmology, which is different than Western European religious Judeo-Christian cosmology. Okay. Even though early Christianity looked very similar to traditional African spiritual systems. That's a whole nother show. Okay, that's before the 21 ecumenical councils, starting with the first council of Nicaea in 325 AD, and the council of Chalcedon, the council of the different ecumenical councils, Council of Trent, 1563, things like that. That's long before that. Okay, early Christianity. And Christ coming from the Ka rest, Ka meaning spirit, Ka meaning spirit, and rest meaning to rise, coming from the Ka rest, which is coming from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Okay, and Christ being a title, not a name, and Christ coming from Christos, which is Greek, coming from the Kemetic or for the Medunetter. car rest. Okay, it's a whole nother conversation. But anyway, as Professor James Small, one of my teachers, talks about and correctly says, and he has a fantastic lecture, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Fragments of African Spirituality. He talks about how we're actually God having a human experience because we come from that one creative principle. We come from the source, okay? But when we deal with African cosmology, it's different than Western European cosmology, okay? But a lot of us don't know the difference. We're dealing with what's been, for lack of a better word, forced upon us or taught to us. We're coming out of this Eurocentric culture, okay? But that's a whole nother conversation. Also, look at information coming from Dr. Ray Hagins, another one of my teachers as well, the African Village in Atlanta. Was in St. Louis originally, but now in Atlanta. But anyway, but Charlamagne, I said it to say this. Charlamagne Tha God, that's what he's called. He does not claim to be the voice of African Americans, but his show does have a lot of African American listeners, ages 18 to 35. That's the demographic they hit, and and a lot of them are voicing what they are looking for. This is what he was telling Joanne Reed. A lot of them are voicing what they're looking for in the comments on various YouTube videos, etc. When they send them comments on Twitter. Things like this, they're voicing what they're looking for. Okay, I encourage all of them to read Biden's policies for African Americans. You can go to first of all, if you read the article from Black Press USA. Black Press USA had a good article announcing Biden's plan. It's called Joe Biden's Plan for Empowering Black America. Joe Biden's Plan for Empowering Black America. Okay. And it came out May 5th, 2020, because this agenda's been out like 3 weeks, right? Okay. Biden said the plan, in the article it says, Biden said the plan reflects many months of work and feedback from local elected officials, activists, organizations, practitioners, policy experts, strategists, and young people. All right? His campaign called the plan a living document, as Simone Sanders said May 24th when she was interviewed by Reverend Al Sharpton on Politics Nation on MSNBC, and she said they're looking for feedback. Because this is not the ceiling. This agenda is not the ceiling, it's the floor. It's where you start with policy commitments. And as campaigns progress, policies, the overall policies, they expand. But a lot of people don't know this, right? Okay, so we'll post a link here to this article. And then at the end of the article, at the bottom of the article, is the link to Joe Biden's full 22-page agenda at his website. Everybody should read it, especially if people say we want a black agenda. We want a black agenda, and most of them ain't read it. Okay, that's something I don't understand. Okay. All right, okay, whatever. Okay, all right, but you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of a little kid that said they bug their parents because they say they want like this particular toy for Christmas, the hot new toy, and then 2 or 3 weeks later that toy is over in the corner and they're playing with the box the toy came in. You know, that's, but you know. All right. Okay, so let's look at part. Let's jump into part 2. Let's look at education. I did part 1 last week because pages, when I printed this agenda up, it's 23 pages. Pages 2 through 11 all deal with economic empowerment for African Americans, right? So when I hear people say, we want an agenda that deals with economic empowerment. Okay. All right. Anyway. I'm not going to say what I was thinking, but anyway. Okay, so let's go to, this starts on page, what is it, page 12, all right? We did pages 2 through 11 last week. If you missed it, it's on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. Click on videos. Also on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep, and you can watch it there. All right. And we have it in audio podcast format. Go to AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on Carl. Carl said, "Let it out." Okay. I'm gonna tell him come see you if I let it out, Carl. No, it just, but I just gotta say this, okay? Okay, I gotta remember we on 9:10, so I can't cuss. But I find it interesting that you have some people who keep asking for something because they think it ain't gonna happen. Then when they get it, they don't want to go read it. They don't want to go. I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like a guy that pursues a woman, and then he actually gets it, then don't want it anymore, something like that. I mean, all right, just read it, okay? Just read it. All right, so page 12. Expand is so. This is part 2. Okay, of his agenda. His agenda is broken into 6 parts. Expand access to high-quality education and tackle racial inequity in our education system. Expand access to high-quality education and tackle racial inequity in our education system. Okay, all right, y'all need to stop it on social media. All right, but see, this is the thing. See, let's look at this. All right, y'all gonna make me go there. Y'all gonna make me lose my mind up in here. 2 or 3 months ago, people kept saying, we want a black agenda. We want a black agenda, right? Social media, Biden don't have black agenda, all this stuff, right? Then they put one out and your ass don't want to go read it. So what was that really about? It's just like people, when Kamala Harris was in the race, Kamala Harris had a black agenda at a website. Now, it wasn't an extensive one like Biden has. She did have a black agenda. People were saying she didn't have a black agenda. Yes, she did. Your ass didn't go read it. That's what it was. So you got to be careful, a lot of these people who, I call them mouth poppers because they pop off at the mouth, right? You got to be careful, a lot of these people that put this stuff out here. A lot of them just want to get social media views and monetize their videos and make money from it. Okay. I'll keep going. Okay, expand access to high-quality education and tackle racial inequity in our education system. All right? I'm going to give you some highlights because this is pretty extensive as well. As President Biden will ensure that no child's future is determined by their zip code, parents' income, race, or disability. Biden will build an education system that starts with investing in our children at birth and helps every student get some education beyond a high school diploma, whether a certification, associate's degree, or bachelor's degree. Okay? Now, in that, they should also say skilled trade. Okay? And I'm pretty sure he understands that, but that should be in here also. But once again, it's a living document, so it's going to expand. It should also say skilled trade as well. All right. Now, so it's broken down into subheadings. Provide high-quality universal pre-kindergarten for all 3 and 4-year-olds. Then eliminate the funding gap between white and non-white districts and rich and poor districts in order to give teachers a raise and expand STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, STEM curriculum in underserved school districts. And you got people who always talk about STEM. Oh, they should love this. Donald Trump can't spell STEM. Then it gets into improved teacher diversity, reinstate the Obama-Biden administration's actions to diversify our schools, ensure that African American students are not inappropriately identified as having disabilities, while also ensuring that African American students with disabilities have the support to succeed. Okay? Then it gets into address the African American student debt crisis, which is dealing with student loans, which is huge, huge, okay? That has bullet points for that. Then the next heading, increase college completion by making college affordable for African American students. Then it gets into invest over $70 billion in historically black colleges and universities and minority-serving institutions that will train our next generation of African-American professionals. Then that has bullet points also. Then next, create a Title I for post-secondary education to help students at under-resourced four-year schools complete their degree. Okay, create a Title I for post-secondary education to help students at under-resourced four-year schools complete their degrees. The next heading, make a $50 billion investment in workforce training. Make a $50 billion investment in workforce training, including community college, business partnerships, and apprenticeships. Okay, so let's go through and look at each one more in depth. All right, that's the brief overview of it, and I have to look at the time here because we're coming up on another break. All right, so provide high quality universal pre-kindergarten for all 3 and 4 year olds. For families with young children, finding high quality pre-K is a major financial, logistical, and emotional burden with potentially lifelong consequences for their children. As President, Joe Biden will work with states to offer pre-K for all 3 and 4 year olds. Then it gets to the next heading. Now, there are going to be more details coming with a lot of these policies. 1. 2, a lot of this has to pass through Congress as well. So there's going to be more details coming for these policies as well. But this gives you a good overview. The next heading, eliminate the funding gap between white and non-white districts and rich and poor districts in order to give teachers a raise and expand STEM curriculum in underserved school districts. There's an estimated $23 billion annual funding gap between white and non-white school districts. There's an estimated $23 billion annual funding gap between white and non-white school districts. Biden will work to close this gap by nearly tripling Title I funding, the federal government funding schools with a high percentage of students from low-income families. Okay, that's Title I. Biden will work to close this gap by nearly tripling Title I funding. Title I deals with the federal program funding schools with a high percentage of students from low-income families. This new funding will first be used to ensure teachers at Title I schools are paid competitively. 3 and 4 year olds have access to preschool, and districts provide access to rigorous coursework, including computer science and other STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math. And also, now, I don't know if this also will include STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, STEAM. They may expand it to STEAM also, across all their schools, not just a few. The next heading, improve teacher diversity. This is extremely important. For African American students, having just one African American teacher in elementary school reduces the probability of dropping out. Joe Biden will support innovative approaches to recruiting teachers of color, including supporting high school students in accessing dual enrollment classes that give them an edge in teacher preparation programs, helping paraprofessionals work towards their teaching certificate, and working with HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, and minority-serving institutions to recruit and prepare teachers. Having more African American teachers, especially in elementary school, is extremely important, especially African American male teachers. Okay, so if you watch my broadcast from April 26th, we deal with this. Watch my broadcast from the African History Network show from May 17th. We talk about this, right? When I deal with understanding principles of political self-defense, it's understanding whose policies are most beneficial for the African American community, 1. 2, whose policies are most realistic to actually coming into fruition, 2. 3, and it may not be in the exact order, but I'm laying this out. 3, who can create an environment for us or you or us to push our agenda the farthest, push our issues the farthest, and get the most accomplished. Because a lot of this stuff is going to have to pass through Congress. You need a president who would sign the bills into law. 433 bills passed by Democrats in the House of Representatives in 2019. 80% are stuck in the Senate or die in the Senate. Blocked by who? Moscow Mitch McConnell, Republican from Kentucky, who's up for re-election November 3rd, 2020, who needs to be voted out of office. Because you can't get a lot of these bills passed in the Senate because you have 2 chambers of Congress. The House of Representatives, the term is 2 years. U.S. Senate, the term is 6 years. The House of Representatives is the lower chamber. The U.S. Senate is the upper chamber. Okay? Originally, for the first about 124 years, people didn't vote on U.S. senators. U.S. senators were appointed by state legislatures. It wasn't until 1914 that people started being able to vote for U.S. senators. And a lot of that had to do, that was because that was stipulated in the Constitution. A lot of that had to do with the fact that U.S. senators are the ones who will impeach a president, remove a president from office. So they didn't. So the framers of the Constitution, the 39 signers of the U.S. Constitution, September 17, 1787, and when they're debating the Constitution at the Philadelphia Convention in 1787, they didn't want U.S. senators to be subject to public pressure if they had to remove a president from office, go through the impeachment hearings, etc. So U.S. senators originally, for the first about 124 years, were appointed by the state legislature. They were not voted. It wasn't until 1914 because of starting about the 1850s. And if you go to Senate.gov, Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. JT, are we up on a break? How much time before the break?
Right now.
Oh, 1 minute ago. Okay, so we go to break right now. Okay. All right, stand by. We'll continue this on the other side of the break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation WFDF, the Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. Okay, stand by, everybody. We're on commercial break. We'll be back in 2 minutes here.
I took the first step to.
Let me switch this back over. They're playing commercials. Let me switch this back over to Bluetooth. I like doing it from home some, but I like doing it in the studio also. It's better in the studio, okay? Because JT can run all this stuff in the studio. The board out can run all this stuff. I got to run a lot of this stuff at home, okay? All right, so when we come back from the break, we'll continue this. Senate.gov. Senate.gov is the official website of the U.S. Senate. Senate.gov explains how the Senate works. It also deals with history of the U.S. Senate, because I've been to Senate.gov to do historical research on the U.S. Senate. House.gov is the official website of the House of Representatives. Okay? House.gov is the official website of the House of Representatives. They have a historical section there. They have information on the bills in the Senate, all different types of stuff like that. Okay? All right, so I think we have a minute before the break. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this on your social media platforms. When we come back, we'll continue with the second part of Joe Biden's policies for the African American community. This deals with education. The first part I dealt with last week. It dealt with economic empowerment, reducing the racial wealth gap, reducing the racial income gap. It was pages 2 through 11 dealt with economic empowerment. I spent a little over an hour dealing with that last week, and there was still some parts I didn't have time to get to. Okay, so read it. And it's at his website, joebiden.com, and also it's blackpress.us, blackpress.usa, blackpressusa.com has a good article dealing with this as well. I'm going to post this link here, Joe Biden's plan for empowering Black America. Let's see here. Let's go to this. All right, welcome back to the African. Okay, so we're back. Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation Future Radio. I'm your host, Brother Michael Imhotep. It is Sunday, May 24th, 2020, and we are live. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Be sure to follow us on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. And then follow me on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, also IMHOTEP on YouTube. And on my YouTube channel, look at the interviews I've done with Professor James Small. And we have some of his videos there. Look at the interviews I've done with Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Those are two of my teachers, two of our Grandmaster Scholar Warriors. Also, interviews I've done with Dr. Claude Anderson, Professor Kabahaya Kamene, who else? Dr. Ray Hagins. Shout out to all those brothers, some of my teachers there. Okay, so let's see here. Let me post this link here. This is the article from Black Press USA. And the 22-page agenda from the Biden campaign is there. Okay, you can read it in its entirety. I encourage everybody to read it, especially the people who say we want a black agenda, we want a black agenda. Now, as I stated last week, I'll say this again. A black agenda is not what we wait on other people to give us. A black agenda is what we organize and put together based upon understanding history, law, and policies. And we put together a black agenda or African American agenda, and we present it to the candidates. The candidates will then in turn formulate their policies for various communities, because Biden has policies there for the Hispanic community and the Asian American Pacific Islander community, as well as the African American community. Okay? I don't think any of them sat back and waited for him to put together policies. No, they're proactive. A lot of us don't understand this. Okay? A lot of people mean well, but don't understand. No, that's what we present to the candidates. That's not what we wait on them to present to us. A lot of people have this backwards. Can't no white man give you your own agenda. I'm sorry. But what they can do is put together policies based upon, because various organizations, various African American organizations have their own policy issues, have their own agendas, things like this. What they can do is put together policies to address issues in the African American communities that are expressed to them from activists, organizations, elected officials, etc. March of 2017, you've heard me talk about this before. The executive leadership of the Congressional Black Caucus presented a very detailed 125-page agenda to the Trump administration. It was called We Have a Lot to Lose, 21st Century Solutions for Black Families. Everybody should read that. Some of that is in this one here, because the 10-20-30 program from James Clyburn, which was in that agenda, and I read it, that's in this one here from Biden. But a lot of people don't know this. If you go to cbc.house.gov, cbc.house.gov is the official website of the Congressional Black Caucus. Not only can you download their 125-page agenda, which is really good detailed agenda. Now, Trump administration didn't do a damn thing with it. See, that's the other thing dealing with principles of political self-defense, which is a whole concept that I've coined and teach on. You have to have somebody in elective office, but right now we're talking about president. This also goes for Congress, state representatives, state legislature, governor. You have to have somebody in office who can be moved, can be pushed in the right direction. They may not be in the right place right now on a policy issue, but it's somebody who can be pushed in the right direction. Trump, in general, ain't one of those people. Okay? Let me give you a historical example. How many people are familiar with Executive Order 8802? Executive Order 8802 was signed into law by President Franklin Roosevelt, June 25th, 1941. Executive Order 8802. This dealt with desegregating jobs in the Department of Defense for African Americans. Okay? Now, this was a good thing that he did, because a lot of our great-grandfathers or grandfathers who moved up from Mississippi and Alabama and Tennessee and things like this, right? They got jobs in the Department of Defense. This is before World War II starts. Before the U.S. gets involved in World War II. World War II had already started, because President Roosevelt did an address saying that the U.S. could become an arsenal of democracy. So we know that right here in Detroit, right? The big three, General Motors, Ford, and Chrysler, from 1942 to 1945, we know that they stopped making cars and they're making military equipment for the Allied troops. Okay? And the Guardian building was one of the headquarters. The Guardian building in downtown Detroit was one of the headquarters for this initiative. But African Americans were being discriminated against in the Department of Defense, getting jobs in the Department of Defense. A. Philip Randolph, who was the president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters, threatened to put 100,000 African Americans marching on Washington to embarrass President Franklin Roosevelt if he did not desegregate jobs in the Department of Defense. Okay, so this is A. Philip Randolph, who I disagree on some things, agree with other things, because he was part of that whole Garvey Must Go movement, right, earlier in the 1920s, right? But this is A. Philip Randolph leveraging his position as president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters to push a political agenda and to force President Roosevelt to sign this agenda, to sign this executive order. But you had to have somebody who could be pushed in the right direction. Trump ain't that. Okay? So a lot of times people don't understand this. They may not have the right position. They may not have the right political position right here today. But there's somebody who can be educated and pushed in the right direction. That's something you have to look for. That's something very important. Because a lot of people don't understand this, right? Okay, so let's continue. If you go to Britannica.com, which is Encyclopedia Britannica's official website, Britannica.com, and look up Executive Order 8802, they have a whole article dealing with that. All right? So a lot of people don't understand its history, and a lot of those people are going to move into the Sojourner Truth homes here in Detroit. They're gonna buy homes here in Detroit because they work for the Department of Defense. But the reason why it's desegregated is because of A. Philip Randolph. Now, Roosevelt may get the credit for signing it, but it was A. Philip Randolph to put the political pressure on his behind. It was A. Philip Randolph who leveraged his position as president of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters to threaten to politically embarrass Franklin Roosevelt. All right, let's continue. So we talked about improved teacher diversity. Next, we have reinstate the Obama-Biden administration's actions to diversify our schools. Okay, that's the next point here. This is page 12. As president, Joe Biden will reinstate the Department of Education guidance that supported schools in legally pursuing desegregation strategies and recognize institutions of higher education's interests in creating diverse student bodies. And he will provide grants to school districts to create plans and implement strategies to diversify their schools. The next part of this is all dealing with education. Ensure that African American students are not inappropriately identified as having disabilities, while also ensuring that African American students with disabilities have the support to succeed. So this is in bold type, okay? Then they go on to explain this. African American students are 40% more likely to be identified as having any disability and twice as likely to be identified as having certain disabilities. Okay, let me repeat that. African American students are 40% more likely to be identified as having any disability and twice as likely to be identified as having certain disabilities, such as emotional disturbance and intellectual disabilities. The Obama-Biden administration issued regulations to address racial disparities in special education programs, including disproportionate identification. The Trump administration attempted to legally delay the Obama-Biden administration's regulation. Joe Biden will fully implement this regulation and provide educators the resources that they need to provide students with disabilities and high-quality education by fully funding the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. All this deals with policies. All this deals with laws. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. This is what politics is. Politics impacts every aspect of our lives, okay? Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, the adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. When you read Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution, Article 6 clearly tells you that the U.S. Constitution and all of the previous treaties and all of the subsequent treaties are the supreme law of the land. So we don't understand law. Many of us don't understand law, history, treaties, things like this. It's right there in the U.S. Constitution. But I speak all across the country. Most of us haven't read it. I'm like, go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website, loc.gov. You can read the U.S. Constitution there. Also archives.gov. Read the U.S. Constitution there as well, okay? And then, this is a good book to have, The Declaration of Independence and Other Great Documents of American History. The Declaration of Independence and Other Great Documents of American History, 1775 to 1865. This is about $2. So it's from Dover Books. That's the publisher. So this has the Declaration of Independence, the Gettysburg Address, the U.S. Constitution, all of that in here. Okay? All right. Let's continue here. So how's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. We're on Facebook fan page, The African History Network. The African History Network, also on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, Imhotep. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network through Cash App, $, The AHN Show through Cash App, $, The AHN Show through Cash App, also through PayPal, paypal.me/The AHN Show, paypal.me/The AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com also, okay? All right, let's continue. So a lot of people don't know exactly what the Department of Education does. One of the things the Department of Education does is they chronicle and investigate sexual assaults on college campuses. We just saw the change in dealing with sexual assaults that Betsy DeVos made. Who is one of the Betsy DeVos is totally unqualified to be Secretary of Education. This is one of the dumbest ass women I've ever seen in my life. And if you watched her U.S. Senate confirmation hearings, you know what I'm talking about. She was clueless about education. But the reason why she was nominated by Trump is because she was a big donor to his campaign. And she's fulfilling his agenda. Okay? Because one of the things that Betsy DeVos has done as Secretary of Education is relaxed restrictions that the Obama administration put on for-profit colleges. Because under the Obama administration, they shut down a lot of for-profit colleges like Corinthian College and ITT Tech. Because a lot of these for-profit colleges were disproportionately targeting African American students and Hispanic students, getting them to take out exorbitant student loans. Then they can't pay the loans back. They're not placed in jobs that have anything to do with what their degrees and certifications are in. Can't pay the loans back, end up defaulting on loans, things like this, right? So Betsy DeVos comes along, and keep in mind, she was nominated by a guy who ran a fake university called Trump University. And what they do is they relax these restrictions that were put on these for-profit colleges and reverse a lot of what the Obama-Biden administration did when it came to education. Okay? So after we get through, this is week 2, after we go through all 6 parts of Biden's policies for African Americans, then what I'm going to do is we'll go through and we'll look at all of the cabinet positions in the president's cabinet, which deals with the different departments: Attorney General, the Secretary of Education, Secretary of Agriculture, which is Sonny Perdue, Small Business Administration, the energy department, labor department, all those things. All that stuff impacts us also. Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, all those things impact us as well. A lot of us just don't know how. Okay? So, stay tuned for that. All right, let's continue here. Okay, so ensure that African American students are not inappropriately identified as having disabilities, while also ensuring that African American students with disabilities have the support to succeed. Okay, so we dealt with the details on that. Next, address the African American student debt crisis. This is huge, huge. The student debt burden has a disproportionate impact on African Americans. The typical bachelor's degree has about $16,000 in debt. The typical bachelor's degree graduate has about $16,000 in debt compared to $23,400 for African American students. According to a recent Brookings Institution study, African Americans graduating with a 4-year degree are 5 times more likely to default on their student loans than white students. African American students are 3 times more likely to default on their student loans than white student borrowers. Okay, African American students are 3 times more likely to default on their student loans than white student borrowers. The inequitable burden of student loan debt contributes to the stark racial wealth gap that exists in society. Biden's plans to address student loan debt will alleviate student debt burdens by, then they go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They list 6 bullet points. We'll get to some of that very quickly. And JT, do me a favor, cue up the second clip. I'm going to go to that second clip before we run out of time here. Okay. If we go last week, I talked about blackenterprise.com had a good article. Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. Black women lose out over $1 million in their careers thanks to the wage gap. This ties into Black women's equal pay day. Okay, the average African American woman has to work 20 months to make the same amount of money that the average white male makes in 12 months. The average African American woman makes 61 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. Expressed another way, and it's laid out here in this article, an African American woman will lose out on $946,120 over a 40-year career if she continues to make 61 cents on the dollar that every white man earns due to the wage gap. Analysis by the National Women's Law Center shows this is real money. The average African American woman loses $1 million in earnings over a 40-year career. Expressed another way, quote, assuming she and her white non-Hispanic male counterpart began work at age 20, an African American woman would have to work until she is age 86 to catch up to what a white non-Hispanic man has been paid by age 60. What happens is because of that wage gap, and the African American men also experience something similar to this. African American men make about 79 or 80 cents for every $1 that the average white male makes. When it comes back to paying student loans, guess what? You're making less money, but you got to pay back more money in student loans on average. Okay, so if we look at this, the typical bachelor's degree graduate has about $16,000 in debt compared to $23,400 for African American students. So you're making 79 cents or 61 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes, but you're paying back more in student loan debt, which takes away money that you can use to buy a house, buy a car, put in savings, start a business, etc. Okay? So this is real. This is an example of understanding how policies and laws, etc., impact every aspect of our lives. This ties directly into economics, our economic condition, wealth creation, etc. So read the article from because I've been studying Black women's equal pay day for I think about the past 5 years now. In the state of Louisiana, the average African American woman makes 47 cents for every dollar that the average white male makes. 47 cents. This is why in July of 2018, 19, going back to what Charlamagne Tha God said, and listen to some things that he says. I can tell he's still learning about politics. I told you, because I told you 2 weeks ago, I'm listening to him. I could tell a lot of stuff he doesn't understand dealing with politics. Okay, he did ask some good questions in the interview with Biden. But if you study these policies that Democrats are passing in the House of Representatives, you see who's blocking them in the Senate. It's Republicans. Now, I'm neither Democrat nor Republican. But game recognizes game. You can't slick a can of oil. I see who's blocking this stuff. That's why a lot of these Republicans have to be voted out of office November 3rd, 2020. Basically, all of them. November 3rd, 2020 in the U.S. Senate. All of them are not up for re-election. It's about 20 or so. And then Democrats have to maintain the House of Representatives. You can't get these bills passed in general. There may be one here, one there. But to get these bills passed that Biden wants to do to benefit the African American community, you got to get these passed through Congress. In the U.S. House of Representatives, there are 435 seats. It takes 218 votes to get any bill passed in the U.S. House of Representatives. In the U.S. Senate, there are 100 seats in the U.S. Senate. Only 3 held by black people. One of them you can't count on. That's Black Tea Party Republican Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina, who's against extending the unemployment insurance, the $600 a month that's coming from the federal government. He and Lindsey Graham are against extending that. You got damn near 6 million African Americans who've lost their jobs in 9 weeks because of your golfing buddy, Donald John Trump, who's playing golf this weekend. We're about to hit 100,000 people dead because of his incompetence, and his ass is off playing golf. Okay. See, at some point, you got to realize you got the power to take these jackasses out of office. And if you let them stay in office and keep brutalizing you, maybe you just want to keep being brutalized. I mean, just say, okay. You got to realize it, as I explained. If you listen to my show, as I explain to people, Election Day is your opportunity to fire these people that you keep calling the radio shows every day complaining about. Every day people calling the 9, 10 a.m. superstation. Every day people calling the radio shows across the country complaining about elected officials. Election Day is your opportunity to fire their asses. Now, if you keep calling and complaining about them and don't go vote them out of office, then we have to have, well, maybe you just like being brutal. Maybe you just like what's happening to you. Maybe. So the other part of this is because many African Americans have been so psychologically damaged. This is why African history and culture is the foundation. It gives us our values, our interests, and our principles. And when I talk about that, when I talk about the pyramid principle, the foundation is African history and culture. The 2 sides of the pyramid, economic empowerment and political empowerment. We have to have a synthesis of all 3 of these. It's not one or the other. We have to have a synthesis of all 3 of these, as 2 of my teachers, Professor James Small and Dr. Leonard Jeffries, correctly teach us. The reason why many of our people don't fight back is because many of our people do not think they are worth fighting for. The reason why many of our people don't fight back is because many of our people don't think they're worth fighting for. It's not because they think they can't win, because they go play the lotto every day, or the lottery every day and play the lotto every week. And you got 1 in 2 million chance, 1 in 10 million chance, 1 in 200 million chance, depending upon how much money's in the pot. They'll go pay money to do that. But, Robin Walker, the great African historian Robin Walker, who lives in the UK, and we're Facebook friends, you'll see me share some of his posts. He's in Hidden Colors 4. And I've read some of his books. He was interviewed by the Pan-African Institute. And on YouTube, they have it on YouTube. It's a video where he talks about racial esteem versus self-esteem. Racial esteem versus self-esteem. And he said many black people will have high self-esteem but low racial esteem. They may think of themselves highly but think of their racial group lowly. Or they can have low self-esteem and low racial esteem. And how we think of ourselves is a combination of the images and the concepts that we have about ourselves. This is why that foundation, African history and culture, is so important. Because our history and culture it gives us our self-esteem, our self-development, our self-worth. Okay? And the people's history and culture teaches them how to deal with the problems of the past and the present and the future to meet the needs of the community. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow other people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. So you can't listen to negative corporate-controlled hip-hop that dehumanizes you and that dehumanizes us and our women and causes all type of derogatory names and dehumanizing names and things like this, and think we're going to have a positive image of ourselves and a positive image of people that look like us. This is why this is why I explained this to Dr. Claude Anderson. He called me one day and he asked, because he's one of my teachers and we talk. He asked, why aren't people following? You know, why can't I get this information? Why aren't people really understanding this information I'm talking about then with the economic empowerment, etc.? I said, Doc, your 5-story building concept is good, but it's at least 6 stories. The foundation is African history and culture. You're starting with you're starting your 5-story building with the first floor. You're starting with this economics. No, the first floor is African history and culture. You're trying to build an economic foundation with a people who've largely been taught to hate themselves, and many of them have internalized this. Every ethnic group in America uses their history and culture to fight for scarce wealth, power, and resources, but their history and culture reinforces positive images about themselves. Ours is totally different. Okay? So you're not going to be able to build an economic, trying to do that, trying to build an economic foundation. And we have been largely stripped of our history and culture, stripped of our names, stripped of our spiritual systems, and largely taught to hate ourselves. Many of us have internalized that to various degrees. It's like trying to build a house on quicksand. That's what it's like. So the 5-story building is an excellent concept, but the foundation is African history and culture. Until we understand that we have to have a synthesis of all that. It's not just African history and culture. Because some of us think we just going to, too many of our people are trying to metaphysically transport ourselves back to ancient Egypt 3000 BC. So we don't have to deal with what's going on today. That ain't going to work either. You can stay as high as you want to on marijuana and mushrooms. That ain't going to work. So we have to have a synthesis of the history and culture, the economic empowerment, as well as the politics. They all work together. It's not an either or. But we have to understand this. My background is in dealing with all three of them. That's why I understand it. It's not what I saw in documentaries or read in books. It's from experience. All right. Even though I'm in 7 documentaries and read many books. Okay. Okay. So, all right. Let's go to this clip here. Okay. So what we're going to do, I want to go, hey, JT, we have clip 2 queued up. Clip 2 deals with the update.
Yep.
Okay. So I want to go to this clip here before we run out of time on 9:10 a.m. Superstation. We're going to continue on my social media platforms after the top of the hour for a little bit longer. See how much energy I have left. Who knows? Who knows what evil lurks in the hearts of men? The shadow knows, right? I'm an old radio show buff also. But anyway, I want to go to this clip here. We have updated in the Ahmaud Arbery case. Okay, the third man who proclaimed his innocence and said, hey, I was just there videoing it. I guess he's the videographer. His ass was arrested too. Let's go to this clip.
We have breaking news tonight in the Ahmaud Arbery case. William Roddy Bryan has been arrested on felony charges of murder and criminal attempt to commit false imprisonment. You might remember Bryan because he was the man who filmed the brutal shooting of Arbery near Brunswick, Georgia, back in February. Arbery was out for a run, according to his family. He was chased down, shot, and killed by 2 white men, Gregory McMichael and his son Travis McMichael. The McMichaels have said they believed Arbery was a burglary suspect. Both men have been arrested and face charges of aggravated assault and murder. According to a police report, Bryan was in a vehicle that tried to cut Arbery off while he was being chased by the McMichaels. The video, which was released 2 months later, was the catalyst for the arrest of the McMichaels. Brian has maintained his innocence. Earlier this week, Arbery's family lawyer called on the Georgia Bureau of Investigation to arrest Brian. I'm joined now by Benjamin Crump. He also represents Ahmaud Arbery's family. And Ben, walk us through this, because originally it looked like the two cars were working in some way, right? They were together, but then the second man was separated. The second car was separated. Is the allegation now that they were working in tandem?
That's exactly right, Joy. And as Ahmaud Arbery's family and my co-counsels have said from the very beginning, we believe that he was an accomplice to this execution of Ahmaud, because the police report, Gregory McMichael stated that Rowdy cut him off. And when you put that in context, Joy Reid, with that text message that was sent to Gregory McMichael and the homeowner saying that next time he comes through, don't call the police, call Gregory McMichael. So this was an organized effort of them to capture this young man when he came jogging through their neighborhood.
And so the arrest now, the significance of that is that because there was a potential that the man in the second car could be a witness in the case. That doesn't look like the case at this point.
Well, I think he may have information to divulge. We are just starting this criminal process, and it's going to be very interesting what agreements individuals make or won't make as they try to protect themselves. We believe William Rowdy Bryan was part of this from not only what we had in that statement, but remember, Joy, when you watch that chase where Ahmaud Arbery is running for his life, you see over 4 minutes that these cars are chasing him. And so for him to tell us that he was just an innocent bystander is not supported by what we see in the video. In fact, it is contradicted. So the charge of felony murder is absolutely appropriate.
And I understand now that there has been a retirement in that police department, in that community. Can you give us a little bit of a detail on that? It seems the police is now retired from the force.
In Breonna Taylor's case, yes, ma'am. In Louisville, Kentucky, where she was executed, her bedroom, the police chief retired. And so it is a great day for justice. So that's a retirement in the Breonna Taylor case. Yes, ma'am. It's a great day for equal justice, Joy, in both Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor. And I know it's so much to cover. We might not get to all of it, but at Attorney Ben Crump, for everybody who stood for Bree and ran for Ahmaud, we want us to stay focused as we get this march for justice for these two young people who were both 26 years old if they were living today, and has so much potential for this world that we have to stay vigilant to get them justice. We cannot stop now. This is just the first steps towards justice.
Benjamin Crump, thank you so much for coming on tonight. We grabbed you at the last minute, so I really appreciate your time. So just to clarify for the audience, in the Breonna Taylor case, the police chief has resigned. In the case of Ahmaud Arbery, we've now had a third man arrested. These are important new developments. Ben, I'll keep in touch with you, but hopefully you'll keep in touch with the show as well so we can keep those updates coming. Thank you so much.
All right, so let's continue here. I'm going to give you these articles here. Charges dropped against Breonna Taylor's boyfriend. Police chief announces retirement same day FBI takes up investigation case. They're running for cover. They know it's a cover-up going on. They're running for cover. This is AtlantaBlackStar.com. AtlantaBlackStar.com has some really, really good articles, okay? And NBC News reported on this, all the news outlets. A Louisville prosecutor recommended charges be dropped against Kenneth Walker, who was charged with attempted murder after he shot a police officer during the botched raid that resulted in the death of his girlfriend, Breonna Taylor. Commonwealth attorney Tom Wine, W-I-N-E, and let me post this article here. Commonwealth attorney Tom Wine announced his decision on Friday, May 22nd, a day after Metro Police Chief Steve Conrad abruptly retired, and the FBI announced it would investigate the death of Breonna Taylor. Okay, because see, when these local police chiefs know when the FBI comes in and investigates, a lot of this stuff that they've been hiding, they're going to find. So they're running for cover. Okay, and I have some legitimate issues with the FBI, but a lot of times when they come in and do their investigations, it's more thorough than like what the local police did. Commonwealth's attorney Tom Wine said during a press conference, quote, I believe that additional investigation is necessary, end quote. Now, Louisville Commonwealth prosecutor Tom Wine recommended attempted murder charges be dropped against Kenneth Walker, the boyfriend of slain EMT Breonna Taylor. Conrad revealed his retirement plans in a letter to his staff on Thursday, per the Courier Journal, the local newspaper there, the Courier Journal. He did not mention the Taylor case by name, but he noted the force is going through a tumultuous time, the police force. Okay. Now, the retiring police chief said, he wrote, quote, you all are weathering a lot right now, and I know how challenging this is. Approach this as we approach all of our struggles. As a team, look out for each other, show compassion to the community, even when it might not be shown to you, and remember what a privilege this job is, end quote. Now, Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher, Louisville, Kentucky. Louisville is where Muhammad Ali is from also. Louisville Mayor Greg Fisher sang Chief Conrad's praises following the announcement. All right, you can read that also. The Louisville branch of the FBI announced its probe into the case on Thursday afternoon. Quote, the FBI will collect all facts and evidence and will ensure that the investigation is conducted in a fair, thorough, and impartial manner, end quote, the Bureau tweeted. Okay, Conrad's last day, but Taylor, okay, so we know she was shot 8 times. Breonna Taylor died in March after officers stormed her apartment in search of reputed drug dealer Jamarcus Glover, Jamarcus, Jamarcus Glover. No drugs were found, and Jamarcus Glover reportedly was already in custody at the time of the raid. Breonna Taylor was shot 8 times after her boyfriend Kenneth Walker fired at the police officers, striking one in the leg. He was later arrested and charged with attempted murder. Walker's defense, Kenneth Walker's defense, her boyfriend, Kenneth Walker's defense team claimed he mistook the officers for burglars because they did not announce their presence before breaking down their door with a battering ram. Also, he was legally armed. His gun was registered. It was legal, and he's defending his castle, defending his woman. Okay. They said, and it was at least 3 neighbors said they did not hear the police identify themselves before they broke in, and these were plainclothes police officers. Now, to date, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think the National Rifle Association, who is supposed to advocate for the rights of gun owners, I don't think they've come out in support of Kenneth Walker. Okay, I haven't seen any statements from the National Rifle Association. Okay, Wayne LaPierre, of the head of the National Association, I think it's Wayne LaPierre, I think is his name, if I remember correctly. Before, a couple years ago, he said the solution to a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. They haven't come out in support of Kenneth Walker. I haven't seen anything coming out of them putting out statements in support of Kenneth Walker, a legal gun owner, defending his home from intruders, what he thought were intruders. The National Rifle Association is really a lobbying arm for the gun manufacturers, not for the gun owners. They're really a lobbying arm for the gun manufacturers, a lobbying entity for the gun manufacturers. Okay, so read the rest of this here. This is from AtlantaBlackStar.com. Really, really good article. So let's continue here. All right, let's go back to, and what I'm going to do, we're going to do a blitz. I'm going to give you the names of these articles. You can go read them. I'm not going to have time to get through all this stuff here. Hold on. Dealing with coronavirus, we're going to come back to Joe Biden. We'll come back to Biden's policies here, dealing with education. NBCnews.com, new weekly figures show almost 40 million people lost their jobs since the pandemic. It's actually 38.6 million people in 9 weeks, about 6 million African Americans. Another 2.44 million Americans filed for the initial unemployment benefits last week, bringing the total number of people who lost their jobs so far during the coronavirus pandemic to almost 40 million. The weekly figures released Thursday, May 21st by the Department of Labor come amid a slew of bankruptcies and as more companies announce layoffs. Hertz Rental Car just announced they're going bankrupt. They laid off 12,000 people. Hertz just announced they're going bankrupt. You have a number of corporations that have announced. J.C. Penney is one of the recent ones announced bankruptcies. A lot of these are not coming back. Also, it's estimated that about 50% of these jobs, 50% at this point of the 38.6 million, it's estimated that almost 50% are not going to come back. Meaning not the people come back to jobs, ain't going to be no job for you to come back to. What? This is a decimation that's taking place. This is what happens when you have some incompetent leadership as president. This is why Trump has to be voted out of office. This is his fault. This stuff was largely avoidable. But when you got a dumbass who doesn't read his presidential daily briefings, who has declared war on the scientists, okay? And right now, he's removed 4 inspector generals. The inspector generals were put in place based upon a law of the past Congress signed a law by President Jimmy Carter in 1978 as a result of the Watergate crisis that took Nixon out of office. And the inspector generals are there to be independent investigators. Trump is replacing inspector generals with his cronies. Washington Post, April 27th, 2020. President's intelligence briefing book repeatedly cited virus threat. Go read these articles, okay? I got the evidence. I just don't have enough time to provide all the evidence. Proper documentation ends all conversation. I have literally thousands of articles. I'm looking at about 300 right here. Okay. President's intelligence briefing book repeatedly cited virus threat. April 27, 2020. For weeks, FOR. For weeks, the PDB, President Daily Briefing. Not to be confused with BBD. Okay. Or OPP. But this. For weeks, the PDB, as the report is known, traced the virus's spread around the globe, made clear that China was suppressing information about the contagion's transmissibility and lethal toll, and raised the prospect of dire political and economic consequences. There was just an article this past week, I think it was New York Times, that talked about how challenging it is to explain this information to Trump. And they got to put together charts and graphs and make sure this stuff is short, because he has a short-ass attention span. Come on. What the hell do you have to lose? Everything. Your job, your house, your life, your family, your health insurance, your sanity. What the hell do you have to lose? Everything. But the alarms appear to have failed to register with the president, Donald John Trump, who routinely skips reading the presidential daily briefing, and has at times shown little patience for even the oral summary he takes 2 or 3 times per week, according to the officials, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to discuss classified material. The advisories being relayed by U.S. spy agencies were part of a broader collection of worrisome signals that came during a period now regarded by many public health officials and other experts as a squandered opportunity to contain the outbreak. It didn't have to come to this. This was largely avoidable if you had somebody competent as president, but we don't. We got a jackass who's out playing golf while we reach almost 100,000 mark and people dying. So read the rest of this article. This is from Washington Post, written by Greg Miller, April 27, 2020. April 12, 2020. Signs missed and steps slowed in Trump's pandemic response. This is from Associated Press. APnews.com. Signs missed and steps slowed in Trump's pandemic response. By the time dumbass Donald Trump, who I refer to affectionately as Dumb Donald, sometimes I call him Lucifer in the flesh because he is, I think. But, you know, I'm biased, okay? I warned you about his ass in 2016. I told you how incompetent he was. By the time Donald Trump first spoke publicly about the coronavirus, it may already have been too late. Now remember, February 28th, his dumbass was in South Carolina doing a campaign rally, and he called coronavirus the Democrats' new hoax. This is February 28th. Interviewed at Davos, a gathering of global elites in the Swiss Alps, Donald Trump on January 22nd played down the threat posed by the respiratory virus from China, which had just reached American shores in the form of a solitary patient in Washington State. Dumbass Donald Trump told CNBC, quote, "We have it totally under control. It's one person coming in from China, and we have it under control. It's going to be just fine." Oh, so much for that one. In the 11 weeks since that interview, the coronavirus has reached every corner of the globe. It has infected more than 500,000 Americans and killed at least 20,000. Now, this is back then. This came out April 12th. It's killed almost 100,000 now. It has rewritten the rules of society, isolated people in their homes, closed schools, devastated the economy, and put millions out of work. Almost 40 million. This fool said we have it totally under control. Oh, so much for that one. This one here, April 11th, 2020, New York Times. He could have seen what was coming. Behind Trump's failure on the virus, he's too stupid to see. He could have seen what was coming behind Trump's failure on the virus. And examine. Now, this is an extensive article. I printed this out. This is 16 pages, New York Times. I got all this stuff. Okay? I just don't have time to get through this. Okay? So go read these articles. This is an example of how elections have consequences. This is an example of how the 2020 election is literally about vote or die. The 2020 election is literally about vote or die. Okay, I'll keep going. An examination reveals Donald Trump, they call him president. I don't like calling him president unless I'm reading an article. Okay, to me he's a fake president, but you know, whatever. An examination reveals that Donald Trump was warned about the potential for a pandemic, but that internal divisions, lack of planning, and his faith in his own instincts led to a halting response. This is this jackass's fault. Quote, "Any way you cut it, this is going to be bad," end quote, a senior medical advisor at the Department of Veterans Affairs, Dr. Carter Metcher, wrote on the night of January 28th in an email to a group of public health experts scattered around the government and universities. Quote, "The projected size of the outbreak already seems hard to believe," end quote. But there were warnings going back to November and December that Trump ignored. A week after the first coronavirus case had been identified in the United States and 6 long weeks before Donald Trump finally took aggressive action to confront the danger the nation was facing. How many tweets did he do in that 6-week period of time? This fool tweets like that's his job. He tweets like he tweets like he has a full-time job tweeting. And 6 long weeks before Donald Trump finally took aggressive action to confront the danger the nation was facing, A pandemic that is now, at the time, this came out April 11th, 2020, a pandemic that is now forecast to take tens of thousands of American lives. We almost at 100,000. Dr. Metcher was urging the upper ranks of the nation's public health bureaucracy to wake up and prepare for the possibility of far more drastic action. Quote, "You guys made fun of me screaming to close the schools," end quote, he wrote to the group which called itself Red Dawn, an inside joke based on the 1984 movie about a band of Americans trying to save the country after a foreign invasion. It was a foreign power that put his ass in office. Russia. We still haven't figured out the 2016 election. I told you what was going on then because I read the CrowdStrike report and the Fidelis report like in July 2016. So I knew what was behind this. The CrowdStrike and Fidelis were two of the four cybersecurity companies the Democratic National Committee hired to find out who broke into, who hacked the DNC. So I knew what was behind all this. I read that stuff back in July. And then also, Malcolm Nance. Malcolm Nance, who is has a background, 35-year background in intelligence, and he wrote a book dealing with how to hack the 2016 election. Malcolm Nance is a contributor on MSNBC. Malcolm Nance was breaking this stuff down as it was happening and warning America about what would happen and warning America about the intervention of Russia. Malcolm Nance was right on the money. So, okay, Red Dawn, an inside joke on the 1984 movie about a band of Americans trying to save the country after a foreign invasion, okay? Quote, "Now I'm screaming, close the colleges and universities," end quote. Dr. Metcher was warning them ahead of time that you need to close the schools. Are the schools closed? Dr. Metcher warned them you need to close the colleges and universities. Are the colleges and universities closed? His was hardly a lone voice, L-O-N. His was hardly a lone voice. Throughout January, as Donald John Trump, okay, the Manchurian candidate, repeatedly played down the seriousness of the virus and focused on other issues, an array of figures inside his government, from top White House advisors to experts deep in the cabinet departments and intelligence agencies, identified the threat, sounded alarms, and made clear the need for aggressive action. But dumb Donald didn't want to do it. The president, though, they call him president, the president, though, was slow to absorb the scale of the risk and to act accordingly, focusing instead on controlling the message, protecting gains in the economy, and batting away warnings from senior officials. They tell him, look, man, this stuff about to blow up in your face. He's sitting there bragging about the economy and the stock market. It was a problem, he said, that had come out of nowhere and could not have been foreseen. Everybody saw it except your stupid ass. Even after Donald Trump took his first concrete action at the end of January, limiting travel from China, which he always likes to brag about, public health often had to compete with economic and political considerations in internal debates, slowing the path toward belated decisions to seek more money from Congress, obtain necessary supplies, address shortfalls in testing, and ultimately move to keep much of the nation at home. And that whole thing with China, dude, that dealt with shutting down, letting Chinese come here who were not U.S. citizens, if I remember correctly. Because Washington Post has an article dealing with this. There were American citizens who were in China. They came back. Some of them had coronavirus. Hold on. Washington Post has a really, because the way he's breaking this down, he's lying. Okay? And at the same time, Europeans were coming from Europe who had coronavirus. Because it had spread to Europe. Just a second here. Let me pull up this article. There was, this big one from Washington Post. They tore his ass up. Trump's claim that he imposed the first China ban. Okay? This is from April 7th, 2020. This is a fact check from Washington Post where they just go through and expose all this and rip him a new one. April 2nd, let's pull this up on, let me see. How's this computer run? Okay, we'll do it on this one, the second, the backup computer. And I'm trying to get another laptop that's faster than the main laptop, because the main laptop, after an hour and a half, 2 hours on Zoom, it times out, and this I need a faster laptop with a 2 terabyte hard drive also instead of 1 terabyte. Let's see, how are we doing here? Okay, how's everybody doing? We're going to be here for a little while longer because I'm going to wrap this up, okay? April 2nd, 2020, Donald Trump said, I cut off China very early. And if I didn't, we would have a chart that you wouldn't believe. So how would I know to do that? How would I know to cut off Europe? I cut off Europe very early. I mean, you have to make a decision. People knew that some bad things were going on, and they got off to a late start. And some others got off to a late start also. But we cut off China. If we didn't cut off China, we would have been in some big trouble, and we cut it off. April 2nd, 2020 is when this fool said it. You ain't in big trouble. You were in trouble then. Donald Trump regularly pats himself on the back for announcing travel restrictions on China as the novel coronavirus emerged in January. Before the caseload in the United States exploded, Trump attributed what he considered a small number of cases to that decision. Even as deaths from COVID-19 in the United States started to soar, he said he saved lives by imposing what he calls a ban on China. He went on to say, quote, we're the ones that gave the great response, and we're the ones that kept China out of here, Trump said on March 25th. And if I didn't do it, you'd have thousands and thousands of people died who would have died that are now living and happy. We're almost at 100,000. The World Health, so that's what this fool said. Okay, awesome. Now, the World Health Organization has cautioned against such travel restrictions, saying they are ineffective against a virus and in the long run counterproductive. Donald Trump, according to news reports, was initially skeptical and worried about provoking China after signing a major trade deal. But his national security and public health experts convinced him that the move would buy time to put in place effective prevention and testing measures. The government then bungled the testing rollout, but that's another story. They just screwed this. I told you before, this is the little rascals and the Three Stooges running the government. We ain't never seen no incompetence like this. You say what you want to about President Obama. I disagree with some policies. Oh, he ran the government butt better than this. Oh, this is when it happened under President Obama. Well, number one, he can read. Number two, he reads his presidential daily briefings. He read his presidential daily briefings, right? This is the Three Stooges and the little rascals running the government. Now, in Trump's telling, he took bold action ahead of others. Quote, when I did China, it had never been done before. Okay? He said, I was the first one to do it. Not quite. Here's what the record shows. They break down the facts. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, on January 21st, 2020, announced the first travel-related case of novel coronavirus in the United States. Donald Trump unveiled his plan 10 days later, making the restrictions effective February 2nd. On January 17, 2020, the CDC had begun health screenings of passengers on direct or connecting flights from Wuhan, China, the epicenter of the outbreak. Donald Trump barred non-U.S. citizens from traveling to China, non-U.S. citizens from traveling from China. Donald Trump barred non-U.S. citizens from traveling from China. But there were 11 exceptions. And Hong Kong, Macau, M-A-C-A-O, and Taiwan were not included in being barred. U.S. citizens and permanent residents could still travel from China, but were subject to screening and possible 14-day quarantine. So you screen. When you're screened, it shows if you have it right now. You could have encountered it, and the viral load is not large enough in your system to be detected, and you may not have any symptoms yet. It may develop 2, 3, 4 days, 10 days after you go through the screening. U.S. citizens and permanent residents could still travel from China, but were subject to screening and possible 14-day quarantine. Some flights were immediately suspended, but others continued for weeks at the discretion of the airlines. Some analysts at the time predicted that Trump's action would be ineffective at preventing the virus from taking hold in the United States. Now, Jennifer Nuzzo, N-U-Z-Z-O, who's an associate professor and senior scholar at Johns Hopkins University Center for Health Security, at a congressional hearing on February 5th said, quote, "All of the evidence we have indicates that travel restrictions and quarantines directed at individual countries are unlikely to keep the virus out of our borders," end quote. Now, Ron Klain, K-L-A-I-N, Ron Klain, K-L-A-I-N, who was the Ebola czar during the Obama administration, and you see him oftentimes on MSNBC, interviewed on MSNBC. He's a contributor to MSNBC. He said, quote, "We don't have a travel ban. We have a travel band-aid right now. We don't have a travel ban, B-A-N. We have a travel band-aid right now." He added that monitoring everyone carefully, quote, "is the only practical thing we can do," end quote. Now, the New York Times calculated that at least 430,000 people in the United States on direct flights from China since January 1st. The New York Times calculated that at least 430,000 people arrived in the United States on direct flights from China since January 1st, 2020, including nearly 40,000 in the 2 months after Trump imposed restrictions. So these restrictions didn't do anything. That didn't mean anything. Moreover, screening proceedings of travelers from China have been uneven and inconsistent, the New York Times reported. In any case, the United States certainly was not the first country by a long shot. The Washington Post reviewed a list of country actions maintained by the Council of Foreign Relations and cross-checked with official announcements. 6 countries imposed travel restrictions even before the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency on January 30th, 2020. Another 6 countries announced travel restrictions that same day, followed by 11 countries besides the United States announced a restriction January 31st, 2020. Go through, read the rest of this. This fool, I almost called him something else. This fool just sitting up there lying his ass off. He's just lying. Okay? Trump's claim that he imposed the first China ban. No, he didn't. And there was still 430,000 people still came in from China the 2 months after you put the quote-unquote China ban on. After you imposed the China ban. Man, get the hell out of here. Okay? Read this article from the Washington Post. We're going to post it here on the thread of the broadcast. Okay? See, this is an example of how elections have consequences. A lot of people can't follow every nuance and every day to day. This is what I do. That's how I know where to go to get the information. I already read it. All right, let's continue here. Okay, so read this other article from New York Times. He could have seen what was coming. Okay, see, this is all stuff I've got printed up and read. I do research. He could have seen what was coming behind Trump's failure on the virus. Okay. So, intelligence report warned of coronavirus crisis as early as November. Sources, April 8th, 2020, abcnews.go.com. We've got all the evidence. This fool has massive blood on his hands. Okay? This is the most incompetent son of a bitch I've ever seen in my life. And we off 9:10 a.m. so I can tell you what I really feel. This motherfucker right here, this the most incompetent son of a bitch I've ever seen in my life. Alright? Wouldn't piss on his ass if he was on fire. I'm telling you. I have no respect for him. Alright. Let's continue. We got this. Intelligence report. President signs stop Associated Press. Okay, we got through all those. I gave you those. Read that. Oh, last one. Didn't give you this one. March 19th, 2020. New York Times, huge article from New York Times. Before virus outbreak, a cascade of warnings went unheeded. Before virus outbreak, a cascade of warnings went unheeded. Government exercises, including one last year, made clear that the U.S. was not ready for a pandemic like the coronavirus, but little was done. This is the most incompetent ass administration I've ever seen. All right. In the U.S. Okay, so read those. That's enough to keep you busy till next week, next Sunday. All right? That's enough to keep you busy. Let's see. Okay, we got that. And all right. So let's go back. I'm trying to just simplify this, right? Because I got a ton of information here. All right, I got enough information to go to next Sunday's show. I mean, literally. This is all. I mean, this is all research right here. This ain't no Oprah, Gayle, Jada Pinkett Smith bullshit. This is all politics. This is all law, policy. Coronavirus. Why the second wave of the 1918 Spanish flu was so deadly. This all dealing with the Spanish flu pandemic of 1918. This is a number of different articles dealing with that stuff here. This is the type of stuff I deal with. All that Simple Simon ass nonsense. I don't have time for that. Okay. I got file folder upon file folder of articles, research. This is stuff that I was looking at. Oh, this deals with before 1619 there was 1526, the mystery of the first enslaved Africans and what became the United States. Then we look at this here. Black people's land was stolen. This is from June 20th, 2019. This all deals with, this is dealing with history, but also dealing with the impeachment trial. And, oh, this is right here. I've talked about this before. Everybody read this. Because this deals with, this also ties into how Attorney General William Barr, an Attorney General is nominated by the President and confirmed by the U.S. Senate. Attorney General William Barr is at odds with progressive DAs, especially progressive African-American DAs that were elected by the people, right? Which article is this? Prosecutor sues her own city under a law passed to fight the KKK. This deals with the Ku Klux Klan Act of 1871, which is one of the 3 enforcement acts passed from 1870 to 1875 during Reconstruction. A battle, but this is from January 13th, 2020. I deal with in my lecture that I did in February, dealing with does an amendment give you the right to vote? Does an amendment give you the right to vote? Because nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anyone the right to vote. The 15th Amendment of 1870 that was ratified February 3rd, 1870. And we know this year is the subsequent centennial, the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, which guaranteed the right to vote to African American men. But nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anyone the right to vote. Right? A battle between St. Louis's first African American top prosecutor and the city's largely white legal establishment escalated this week, with the prosecutor suing her opponents under a little used federal law based in the wake of the Civil War to stem violence from the Ku Klux Klan. Kimberly Gardner, African American female prosecutor there in the St. Louis area. Kimberly Gardner, the St. Louis Circuit Attorney, accused city officials, the local police union, and a special prosecutor of a, quote, racially motivated conspiracy to deny the civil rights of racial minorities, end quote, by interfering with her efforts to crack down on police misconduct and to institute changes in the city's criminal justice system. Read this article here. This is New York Times. Prosecutor sues her own city under a law passed to fight the KKK. Because I did a whole presentation dealing with in February, dealing with the 150th anniversary of the 15th Amendment, and understanding that an amendment does not give the right to vote. Because when you read the 15th Amendment, it's in two parts. Go to loc.gov, Library of Congress website, read the U.S. Constitution. This goes back to the Constitution, right? It says it protects or guarantees the right to vote. But nowhere in the U.S. Constitution does it explicitly give anyone the right to vote. All right, let's continue. Okay, so let's go back to Biden. Okay, let me see. Hold on. Let me look at the rundown of tonight's show and look at the topics. Okay, we dealt with 38.6 million people unemployed. We were talking about that. NBCnews.com. New weekly figures show almost 40 million people lost their job since the pandemic. You saw that I posted articles about that on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. While the month of May still represents a staggering total of job losses, the number of unemployment benefit claims has been in gradual decline after hitting a peak of 6.8 million for the week ending March 28th. Okay, we know that. The current unemployment rate of 14.7% is the worst since the height of the Great Depression when it hit 24.9%. This unemployment rate of 14.7% is the worst since the Great Depression. Donald Trump said he was going to take the economy to places you've never seen before. He was right. He's driving it to the ground. The African American unemployment rate is almost 17%. Read this article, right? One thing about Trump, he does lie about a whole lot of things, but some things he don't lie about. He said, we're gonna take the economy. You ain't gonna believe how the economy's gonna be. Yeah, you right about that. I almost called it something. Yeah, you right about that. Okay, hold on. Now there was a group of articles I had together. We're gonna run through that quickly, and then we're gonna go back to Biden's plan. And where did I put that? Hold on. There was it's a group of articles I had dealing with coronavirus. I'm going to give you the names of these articles so we can zip through that, and then we'll get back to part 2 of Biden's plan dealing with education. Oh, right here. Washington Post, May 21st, 2020. I read the Washington Post and New York Times every day. I have digital subscriptions to them. So I monitor about 35 different news sources on a daily basis. I get emails all throughout the day from news outlets because I subscribe to numerous news outlets for updates and emails. I have the apps of abcnews.com, NBC News. This NBC News app right here on my phone. So I monitor the stuff throughout the day. Trump gutted the checks on his power when they were needed the most. Yep, that's NBC News. We got the apps on my phone. I monitor this throughout the day. The Smart News app, they pull news articles from all different news outlets. I'm reading this stuff all throughout the day. This is what I do. I'm not somebody with a YouTube channel. I'm a radio talk show host, historian, researcher. This is what I do. ABCnews.com. We got New York Times app right here. We got abcnews.go.com. Let's see. Hold on. Where's ABC? ABC right here. ABC News app. All this stuff. This is what I'm researching. Okay. And then tunein.com, because I listen to when I'm not in the office and I'm out on the road. I'm listening to MSNBC through the TuneIn app. So you can listen to MSNBC through free. Download the TuneIn, TuneIn. Download the TuneIn app. You can listen to MSNBC for free. So if you don't have cable, you can listen to MSNBC right here. Okay, you can listen to MSNBC right here. Listen all when I'm traveling across the country, when I'm out traveling around in Detroit, I'm listening to MSNBC. All right. And then we know on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF, Monday through Friday, 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, you can listen to Keeping It Real with Reverend Al Sharpton, his nationally syndicated radio show. I listen to his show when I'm listening to MSNBC. A lot of times in the car, if I'm in the car, I have 9:10 a.m. the Superstation on the radio, the car radio, and I'm listening to MSNBC through my Bluetooth earpiece. I listen to them at the same time. So this is what I do. All right, social distancing a week earlier could have saved 36,000 American lives, study says. This just came out May 21st, 2020, Washington Post. On March 8th, it was... On March 8th, it was mostly business as usual in the United States as the LA Lakers faced the LA Clippers in a much anticipated Los Angeles basketball matchup. Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont, rallied. I'm not going to get into Bernie Sanders running on the Democrat as a Democrat for president, but he's really an independent. When he goes back to the Senate, he's going to be independent again. He's not going to be a Democrat like in 2016. But we ain't gonna talk about that. I like Bernie, but we ain't gonna do it. Gang recognizes gang, Bernie. Come on now. We ain't gonna talk about that. Okay, so Senator Bernie Sanders, independent from Vermont. Go to Senate.gov. Every U.S. senator has a page at Senate.gov. It tells you the committees they're on. It tells you their political affiliation. Go to Bernie Sanders. It consistently says independent Vermont. Rallied before a packed crowd in Michigan. Senator Bernie Sanders rallied before a packed crowd in Michigan. In Miami, thousands squeezed into the beach for a massive dance party with 500 coronavirus infections reported nationwide at the time. 500! Those were the good old days. We're talking about March 8th. 500 coronavirus infections reported nationwide at the time. The outbreak seemed like a distant threat to many Americans. So if we look at Johns Hopkins University, we look at Argus.com, ARCGIS.com. We see nationwide, America is at about 1.6 million reported cases, almost 100,000 reported deaths. Okay, and March 8th, 2020, we had 500 coronavirus reported cases. But by the following Sunday, the nation had entered a different universe. Okay, by the following Sunday, the nation had entered a different universe. 2,000 confirmed cases, dozens of deaths, and shutdown orders in Illinois, Ohio, and New York City, among other parts of the country. What if those sweeping measures imposed by March 15th, a federal warning against large gatherings, health screenings at airports, states of emergency declared by governors and mayors, what if all that had been announced a week earlier? New research from Columbia University epidemiologists offered New research from Columbia University epidemiologists offered one possible answer this past Wednesday. If the same kind of social distancing had been in place 7 days earlier, their study found the United States could have prevented 36,000 deaths through early May, about 40% of fatalities reported to date. Quote, if you don't take steps to fight the growth rate aggressively, you get much worse consequences, Jeffrey Charlamagne, an environmental health sciences professor who led the study, told the Washington Post. His team's analysis used infectious disease modeling to examine the spread of the virus from March 15th, when people nationwide began staying home, until May 3rd. The researchers examined transmissions within each county, movement between counties, and deaths to chart how the virus spread and killed over 7 weeks. Okay, then they went on to say, let me see if it's in this article here. Move it back even farther, and the results are more dramatic. If the United States had mustered the same kind of political and public will against the virus on March 1st, 2020, the researchers found 54,000 fewer Americans would have died of the illness. Now, by Friday, May 21st, Friday, May 22nd, the nationwide death toll has surpassed 93,000. The overwhelming majority of this was avoidable. But you had somebody incompetent as president. There are people around him telling him, look, fool, this stuff gonna blow up in your face. This things we need to do now. He didn't want to do it. Okay, so read this article from Washington Post. Social distancing a week earlier could have saved 36,000 American lives. May 21st, 2020. Then we see theguardian.com. I posted this article on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. We see the article from The Guardian. Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at 3 times the rate of white people. This is from May 20th, 2020. The racial wound at the center of the coronavirus pandemic in the U.S. continued to fester, with the latest data showing that African Americans have died from the disease at almost 3 times the rate of white people. New figures compiled by the nonpartisan APM Research Lab and released on Wednesday, this past Wednesday, under the title Color of Coronavirus, provide further evidence of the staggering divide in the COVID-19 death rate between African Americans and the rest of the nation. Across the country, African Americans have died at a rate of 50.3 per 100,000 people. 50.3 per 100,000 people, compared with 20.7 for whites, 20.7 per 100,000 people for whites, 22.9 per 100,000 for Hispanics, and 22.7 for Asian Americans. More than 20,000 African Americans, about 1 in 2,000 of the entire African American population in the U.S. have died from the disease. More than 20,000 African Americans have died from COVID-19. At the level of individual states, the statistics are all the more shocking. Bottom of the league table in terms of racial disparities is the state of Kansas, where African American residents are dying at 7 times the rate of whites. Okay. Gail Finney told a local Kansas TV channel, KW Channel 12, recently, quote, "This is a call to action for our county commissioners, our state and our city officials." Now, in other states, the gulf is almost as extreme. In the nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the nation's capital, the disparity in death between African Americans and whites is 6 times. In Michigan and Missouri, the disparity between African Americans and whites is 5 times. So African Americans are dying at 5 times the rates of white people in the states of Michigan and Missouri. And in major hotspots of the disease. New York, Illinois, and Louisiana, African Americans are dying at a rate 3 times that of white people. Now, despite the glaring gulf, the Trump administration continues to be sluggish in responding to the crisis. Uche Blackstock, I'm not exactly sure I pronounce his first name, U-C-H-E, apostrophe U-C-H-E with an accent over the E. Uche Blackstock, an urgent care physician and CEO of Advancing Health Equity, said that the federal reaction had been anemic. Quote, the disparities are continuing to be reflected in the data, yet we still have a complete lack of guidance from the federal government about how to mitigate these divisions. There is no real plan how to deal with it, end quote, Uche Blackstock said. Now, senior Trump administration officials have blamed the disparities on the high incidence among black people of underlying health conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, and obesity. On Sunday, the Health Secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, pointed to their, quote, greater risk profiles, end quote, and was criticized for blaming the victims of the virus. All this deals with politics. Quote, while comorbidities are a factor, there is mounting evidence that African Americans are disadvantaged in terms of access to diagnostic testing and treatment for the disease. Okay, so read the rest of this. Read the rest of this article. This is from TheGuardian.com. Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at 3 times the rate of white people. And a lot of news outlets picked up on this study. Then BlackAmericaWeb.com had an article from May 19, 2020. Black America Web, because I read not just white news sources, but African American news sources. The Griot, News1.com, Black America Web, Atlanta Black Star, all that stuff too. YoBlackWorld.net. Black Americans dying of COVID-19 at 3 times the rate of white people. This is, okay, that's The Guardian. Then the same day, BlackAmericaWeb.com had the article, Coronavirus Update, Diabetes are more likely to develop severe complications. Diabetics are more likely to develop severe complications from COVID-19. Diabetics are more likely to develop severe complications from COVID-19. May 19th, 2020. The Center for Disease Control and Prevention specifically lists people with diabetes as having a higher risk of severe illness from coronavirus than the general population. Quote, diabetes is a condition that can affect your whole body in different ways, end quote, explains Dr. Jennifer Caudle, C-A-U-D-L-E, a family physician and associate professor at Rowan University. Factor in COVID-19, she says, and there is the potential for severe illness, including internal swelling and kidney failure. Now, Dr. Jennifer Caudle recommends that people with diabetes lower their risk of developing serious complications from COVID-19 by controlling their blood sugar levels, checking in regularly with the doctor, eating a healthy diet, and exercising regularly. Morehouse College has announced it will be terminating and furloughing services. Okay, that's a different article there. Read this from BlackAmericaWeb.com. Coronavirus update. Diabetics are more likely to develop severe complications from COVID-19. Okay, May 19, 2020. Then we see May 24th, 2020. Coronavirus update. BlackAmericaWeb.com. More than 20,000 African Americans have died from coronavirus. Okay, that's picking up on the study from APM Research Lab. Then, okay, so that's, BlackEnterprise.com. 45% of black businesses anticipate closing due to COVID-19. This is from May 21st, 2020. 45% of black businesses anticipate closing due to COVID-19. According to a recent nationwide survey, 45% of African American and Latinx or Hispanic small business owners say they anticipate closing within 6 months due to the coronavirus outbreak. Another 41% say they were denied relief assistance when applied. 21% say they are still waiting to hear if they will receive any form of assistance. In addition, 12% of respondents say they have received the full amount of assistance they were eligible for, despite over half stating they requested $20,000 or less. The Paycheck Protection Program, as well as other federal relief services, have largely ignored minority communities, African American, Hispanic, etc., leaving them the most vulnerable to suffering severe economic loss due to the public health crisis. Now, the third coronavirus, the HEROES bill that Democrats in the House of Representatives have passed, this addresses a lot of this. It's a $3 trillion bill. It's not expected to pass the Senate, but we have to put pressure on the Senate as much as possible, because those Republicans in the Senate, it's going to benefit their constituents also. A lot of Republicans' constituents are catching hell. They've lost their jobs. They've lost their health insurance. And not a lot of attention has been focused on the fact that the 38.6 million Americans who've lost their jobs in 9 weeks, millions of them have also lost their health insurance. So on the back end of this, there's going to be more people dying because they don't have health insurance. But also there are going to be massive bankruptcy, massive individual bankruptcies, massive individual foreclosures, massive individual evictions that are going to take place. I know a lot of states have a 3-month moratorium on evictions and things like this, but your landlord ain't going to just, they're not just going to wipe out 3 months of rent, or your bank, a lot of them not going to wipe out 3 months of mortgage. When this moratorium ends, you're going to be 3 months behind. So then what? This is going to be a major catastrophe. This is what happens when you have incompetent leadership. This is what happens when you have incompetent leadership. The New York Times reported that Rashad Robinson, the president of Color and Change, said the new survey data show that, quote, if we don't get policies to protect these communities, we will lose a generation of black and brown businesses, which will have deep impacts on our entire country's economy, end quote. Read the rest of this article, Black Enterprise. I read Black Enterprise as well, blackenterprise.com. 45% of black businesses anticipate closing due to COVID-19. This is huge, okay? And then we know Magic Johnson has teamed up with a Hispanic entity to put together a pot of $100 million to make loans to African-American, Hispanic-owned businesses. BlackEnterprise.com has an article about that. They announced it on Politics Nation, MSNBC, Reverend Al Sharpton show last weekend. So go check out that interview at MSNBC.com. All right. So let me just give you a little bit more here from Biden's plan dealing with education for the African-American community. And then next week we'll deal with the third part of his 22-page agenda, which is a living document. Is going to expand. The third part is make far-reaching investments in ending health disparities by race. And when you read this agenda, and I've gone through and read it, it starts out on page 1 dealing with COVID-19 and how COVID-19 is disproportionately targeting African Americans. And his agenda addresses that specifically. So we left off, address the African American student debt crisis. Okay, so we talked about that. Then it breaks it, then it lays out 6 bullet points, including in the COVID-19 response and immediate cancellation of a minimum of $10,000 of federal student loan debt, forgiving all undergraduate tuition related federal student debt from 2- and 4-year public colleges for debt holders earning up to $125,000. This will also apply to individuals holding federal student loans for tuition from private HBCUs and MSIs, minority serving institutions. Next, forgiving loan payments for individuals making $25,000 or less per year and capping loan payments at 5% of discretionary income for those making more. Fixing the public service loan forgiveness program and forgiving $10,000 of undergraduate or graduate student debt for every year of national or community service up to 5 years. Next bullet point, cracking down on the private lenders profiteering off of students by empowering the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which Trump has weakened the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, to take action against private lenders who are misleading students about their options and do not provide an affordable payment plan when individuals are experiencing acute periods of financial hardship. Next bullet point, permitting the discharge of student loans and bankruptcy. Okay, so the last bullet point there, dealing with address the African American student debt crisis, is permitting the discharge of student loans in bankruptcies. That is huge, because right now, as the law stands, and this deals with laws passing Congress, you can't discharge student loan debt if you file bankruptcy. Okay, under Biden's plan, this has to pass Congress. As my understanding, it has to pass Congress. This is why Democrats have to maintain control of the House of Representatives and really expand control. Some of these dumbass Republicans in the House of Representatives need to be voted out of office. Jim Jordan in Ohio needs to go, Republican. Matt Gaetz, Republican in Florida, needs to go. Stupid ass Louis Gohmert, Republican out of Texas, needs to go. These are a lot of Trump's henchmen. Need to just do I'm trying to put this politely for social media. Just vote the behinds out of office. Let me just put it like that. Okay, I had some other more colorful language, but we ain't gonna do that because social media platforms have new policies and things like that. So the next main category, this is all under education. Increase college completion by making college affordable for African American students. They go through and explain that. Our post-secondary education system has not done enough to help African American students access, afford, and succeed in high-quality post-secondary education. 64% of white students graduate from four-year institutions, compared to only 40% of African American students graduating from four-year institutions. To help African American students access and complete college, Joe Biden will, 1, make public colleges and universities tuition free for all students whose family incomes are below $125,000, including students at public HBCUs. This all deals with policies. This all deals with politics. Politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. Next, providing 2 years of community college or other high-quality training programs without debt for any hard-working individual looking to learn and improve their skills to keep up with the changing nature of work. They go through and explain this. Read the rest of this. They talk about Pell Grants and things like this. Then the next broad category, invest over $70 billion in the historically black colleges and universities and MSIs, minority serving institutions, that will train our next generation of African American professionals. They go through and explain that. So they have bullet points for that. Then create a Title I for post-secondary education to help students at under-resourced four-year schools complete their degrees. Next, make a $50 billion investment in workforce training, including community college, business partnerships, and apprenticeships. Okay, and apprenticeships. So go through, read all this. You can read that at joebiden.com. His policies, lift every voice, the Biden plan for Black America. Also read the article from Black Press USA that I gave you as well. And the link to the plan is there also. Joe Biden's plan for empowering Black America. All right, look, we're going to get out of here. If you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, and at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Click on the yellow donate button there. All of my DVD lectures are available at our website as well. Okay, follow us on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep. Remember, right now, this corrects wrong behaviors, not over till we win. Wakanda forever, and we'll talk to you next week. Peace.